Is it transphobic to say only women have a cervix?
Well, it is something that shouldn't be said. It is not right. A woman is an adult female, and the court has made that absolute.
The people smash the smash.
And he hasn't smashed anything. I mean, literally all he does is he smashes records every sort of couple of weeks, where more and more people come in a period of 24 hours.
Smash the gangs that are running this vile trade.
You're never going to smash the gangs. That's something that basically is impossible. The gangs are like the Hydra. You cut the head off and another two grow.
So I did write to ministers and say that I wasn't convinced that smashing the gangs was the right sort of way of thinking about things.
We will smash the gangs that undermine our security.
Keir Starmer has just tweeted 15 minutes ago. He says, "I know you're angry about immigration. I get it. We will smash the people smuggling gangs at source." Maybe I'll just read it all in his accent, shall I?
There is no return to freedom of movement. We have left the EU. I do not accept that prevents us working with other police units here, with prosecutors here, to smash the gangs.
Well, I'm sure the smuggling gangs are absolutely quaking in their boots now. Keir Starmer's on their case. Solving this issue, smashing the gangs, is that the impossible dream, Tom?
It really seems beyond him at the minute, I have to say.
We're going to get the evil people smugglers and we're going to smash them and we're going to put them in jail. That will solve the migrant crisis. Prime Minister Keir Starmer's promise to smash the gangs has resulted in just 5 convictions. Hurrah for operating small boats.
So what he really wants to say is that this policy of smashing the gangs is a total and utter disaster. There isn't a cat in hell's chance that it's going to work.
It's crap. It's crap. That's what he's basically saying.
I know you're angry about immigration. I get it. Mark my words, I will take back control of our borders. That means cutting migration, ending the use of asylum hotels, and ramping up our efforts to stop small boat crossings.
It's like a parallel universe, the real world, as told by the impressive David Bolt, and Keir Starmer and Rachel Reeves' fantasy world.
We will smash the people smuggling gangs at source.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
A very, very good morning to you. 3 minutes past 10 o'clock is the time. This is Talk, the home of common sense, with me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. Big welcome back to MG. I know he doesn't go away very much, but we always notice. Great to have you back. Anyway, whether you're listening on DAB Plus Radio or on your smart speaker, watching on YouTube at your connected device, thank you so much for your company today as well. Got quite a lot to talk about. It all rather emerged yesterday, didn't it, while we were on air, when Angela Rayner, the Deputy Prime Minister of this country, had a bubble bath with Beth Rigby from Sky News. Oh, sorry, had a political interview. So difficult to tell the difference, though, wasn't it, if you watched that quite literally soft soap interview that we did actually see yesterday. We played a clip of it on the show for you yesterday. But she admitted dodging up to £40,000 in tax after not paying the full stamp duty on her £800,000 home in Hove. Is it her second home? Is it her third home? Well, she says, it's my main home. It's the only one I owned at the time. And so I was told by the lawyer I spoke to, and now it emerges some other 3 people in total she spoke to, that I was only due to pay the normal rate of council tax, so stamp duty, which was 30k, not the 70k, which, let me see, her own department, as Housing Secretary as well as Deputy PM, had ordered anyone who buys a second home to pay. She gave a tearful apology for the mistake. She was quite happy, obviously, for the Prime Minister at PMQs to stand by her, to be proud to stand by her. Working class, you know. I know, I've never heard that about Angela Rayner. I never knew that she was working class, but apparently that is now a defence for not paying your taxes. I'm sure that millions of working class people in this country will be delighted to know that. I imagine millions of millions of mothers, maybe anyone who's the parent of a disabled child. All the different excuses that have been used, rolled out by Angela Rayner, the Prime Minister and all of her allies in defence of her abject failure to pay the right amount of tax that she's legally due on her property, apparently they can use that excuse themselves with the tax man when he comes a-calling. Well, good luck with that, everyone. Well, we've now got a standards advisor looking into this, and we're all supposed to wait and see until he rules whether she did something wrong or didn't do something wrong. Except that wasn't the rule when Angela Rayner wasn't Deputy Prime Minister, when she was just the Deputy Leader of the Labour Party in opposition, when she happily called for other people to go in office before the Standards Advisor had actually ruled. And I joined her in those calls. I was furious that Rishi Sunak, his wife, was claiming to be a non-domicile and claiming the massive tax benefits from that when she's married to the then Chancellor, then Prime Minister of our country, and her kids are at school here. Oh, do one. He changed those arrangements. The tax was completely repaid that would have been due, and quite rightly so. Nadeem Zahawi, when he was appointed Chancellor, it turns out he'd been in dispute with the HMRC over millions in unpaid tax. He ended up paying a huge fine over that. I called for him to go. I called for Boris to go over some incredibly questionable donations from Tory donors that hadn't been properly registered. I'm pretty consistent on this, I think you'll agree, regardless of the party. One person who's not been consistent, though, is Angela Rayner. Angela Rayner is what used to be known as a hypocrite and what we now probably call a liar. The reality is she wants one rule for everyone else and one rule for herself, where she gets away with doing anything she darn well pleases, calls other people into other parties scum, doesn't pay her right tax, has dodgy dealings over pretty much every house purchase she's ever made. Have you had question marks over any of your home purchases? I haven't. I'm guessing most people in this country haven't. But quite by accident, quite by bad luck, and probably because she's a working class former teenage mother, poor old Angie keeps getting it in the neck for pretty much every home she's ever purchased. I wonder why the reason for that is. Is she someone who has been cruelly attacked because of her background, because of her sex? Or is she a chancer who's been found out? Well, I'd love to know your thoughts on that. Should she go? Should she resign? Should she be sacked by the Prime Minister? Do we need to even wait for this ruling from the ethics advisor? I'd love to know what you think. Give us a call. 0344 499 1000. Text the word talk and your message to 87222. You can get in touch with us on X at talkTV as well. Don't forget, calls are charged at the national rate altogether now. Text costs £1, standard network rate message. I cannot wait to hear your thoughts on this. I'm writing a column on this for the Sun newspaper, and I have to say, I'm pretty darn clear how I know the answer to that question. Philip Ingram is also here. I'd love to know what he thinks. Former senior military intelligence officer. I'd love to know if the head of the army, head of the military, chief of staff, if he or she had the same sort of revelations. Maybe they wouldn't have the same scrutiny, but, well, you know, c'est la vie. If you want to go into politics and be prominent, whether they would still be in a job today.
No, they wouldn't.
There you go. That's your answer.
Hopefully
or a senior police officer.
Hopefully they'd have the moral courage to resign themselves. But of course she can't afford to resign, because she can't afford not to have her ministerial top-up, because she's just bought this, you know, a working class girl, £800,000 apartment nowhere near her constituency.
I don't begrudge her that. No. I mean, all credit. I have huge thing is, people say, oh, people just got a problem with Angie because she's working class, they don't want her in power. As much as I disagree with her on virtually every single issue, as a person, as a woman, I like her. I've had two quite long sort of, sessions chatting with her, alcohol was involved. She's good fun. You'd like her. I like another gobby woman. She's good fun. Yeah. Honestly, but she's quite clearly a chancer who thinks she's cleverer than she actually is in terms of how she can do rinky-dink deals. Dodge a little bit of council tax here, dodge that. Oh, none of it's illegal. None of it's illegal, ever. It's just all a bit complicated. No one else I know has complicated tax affairs like that.
Yeah, well, and I admire her. I admire the fact that she's taken herself from living in a working-class environment as a teenage mum in a council estate and got herself into the position that she's in. But I dislike the hypocrisy of her turning around and saying she hasn't. She's not subject of social mobility. She's moved up to middle class now, and
if you're buying 800k 3-bedroom apartments on the Hove beachfront, you're middle class now.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And say that this is something that everyone should aspire to, but that's not the Labour way of doing stuff. And again, her hypocrisy. We've got questions over the capital gains tax when she first bought her properties, because she didn't live with her new husband and children then.
Yeah.
And we've now got an issue where she's living with her divorced husband and children as the official residents.
I mean, I'll put it this way: she's very unlucky, isn't she, in terms of the legal advice she gets?
Extremely.
I mean, do not let this woman pick your lottery tickets. Don't like the way she picks lawyers. Well, it's interesting, isn't it? Because first she denied that, basically it emerged, someone, I think it was a Daily Mail originally found out she was living in Hove, and they said, oh, she's actually not just on the beach there with a vape in a canoe. She actually lives there. What's she doing? She's an MP in Ashton-under-Lyme. She's got kids and her ex in a house in Manchester. She's got a Grace and Favour apartment in Admiralty in Westminster. What's she doing buying a place in Hove on the south coast? Okay, she's totally entitled to. She's got the money, so there you are. So she buys this place, they look it up, and then they go, oh, hold on a minute, and you can. All this stuff is publicly available. Yep. This is not someone hacking. This journalist doing their job. She hadn't paid the 70k council tax that would be due as a second homeowner. She denied everything. People were sent out to basically criticise journalists, but this is basically, you're just attacking because she's a working class woman. And then days after the denials, days and days, she secretly hires a leading barrister, a KC, an expert in this field, to check her tax files. He comes back to her on Monday, and obviously they went back and forth for a day. Apparently things were not clear. And on the Tuesday, she has to apparently go to the court to get them to lift this injunction regarding the trust set up for her son, because, of course, underage. But the Prime Minister went on telly on Monday at 2 o'clock and defended her. Did he know that she'd already got advice back from this KC at that time or not? Suddenly on Wednesday she comes clean and gets her bubble bath with Beth Rigby on Sky. She admits what's happening. She's all tearful, and then she was just been trying to protect her children and their privacy, and poor her, and she got bad, But again, she hasn't said she got bad advice. She said she was told by her lawyers. It seems to me, if you look at the wording of what she said,
she's been very clever.
It seems to me the lawyers told her, you don't have to pay the full 70k council tax. You can save 40k. Apologies, stamp duty. I'm mixing up the scandals. Silly me. It's such an easy mistake to make, isn't it, Ange? But she says in the statement, the advice. But had they, she doesn't say, I explained my full financial situation and they gave me the wrong advice. Because if those lawyers did know the full situation, Angie and old mucker, if they did and they gave you the wrong advice, you should probably sue them. Yep. You should probably report them to the solicitor's body because they've given you the wrong advice. But I don't think she's going to do that, because I think she didn't give them the full information. Now, I wouldn't know. And I'm guessing you wouldn't know. And I'm guessing 99.9% of people wouldn't know. Indeed, perhaps many lawyers and tax wouldn't know. What is the situation? You've got a trust and you no longer have any money in that trust, but you're still part own it, but you're on the deeds, but you don't have money. I mean, it's complicated. But you know what I would do if I had complicated tax affairs? I'd talk to a specialist.
Exactly.
Maybe if you're the housing secretary, you might know some lawyers.
Would you know anyone that would have any advice on?
I mean, are there any lawyers? Does anyone know if there are any lawyers working? I mean, she could have gone to someone who's trained as a solicitor, the business secretary. Oh no, sorry, Jonathan Reynolds is not trained as a solicitor. Again,
maybe she did go to him.
An easy mistake to make.
Yes.
Or someone perhaps who would really know about tax, who'd worked for the Bank of England for 10 years, like the Chancellor. No, sorry, 5 years. I'm sorry, we have a government of chancellors.
Yeah. And they're bigger chancellors than the previous government, which they criticised, and she called them scum for. And she needs to do the right thing and step aside, because this is going to go on and on and on, and it's going to detract from Keir Starmer's reset.
But yes, by the way, we are now in phase 2 as of Monday, and it's all going brilliantly.
Yes.
I think we'll probably announce phase 3 on Monday.
Well, that's the Labour Party conference, will be the start of phase 3. But he needs to get all this cleared up by then, and it's not going.
Well, it won't be. Realistically, these investigations by standards officers and things seem to usually take quite a few weeks, sometimes even months. Sometimes unreasonable amounts of time.
Yeah.
Here's the thing: if Angela Rayner can provide to this standards advisor a letter that she has got, an exchange of emails that she's written to her advisor and said, look, I've got this situation, I've got this trust for my son, but I've not got any money in it, but although weirdly I seem to have taken £162,000 out of it by buying back my quarter share, so the trust which is funded by an NHS payout for her son's disabilities as a result of negligence by the NHS when he was born, tragically, very prematurely. We didn't need to know any of this. I don't think any of this should have been put into the public domain by her, but she chose to do that. I don't know what it's got. I don't know her having a disabled son has got anything to do with whether she should pay the right tax or not.
It's called deflection.
Called exactly.
Yeah.
Oh, poor me, poor me. I'm so sorry about what's happened to her son and things, but I'm just not entirely sure what that's got anything to do with her paying her stamp duty.
Nothing to do with it.
But if she's got a letter and an email where she said, "Here are my situation. I don't have money in it, I believe, but this is the situation. Is this count as my first home or my second home, etc., etc.?" If she's laid out all of her details. And the lawyer has come back and said, "Oh no, it's absolutely clear. You only have to pay 30 grand in stamp duty, not 70 grand." As far as I'm concerned, although she'll still have to pay it and HMRC will still probably fine her, probably about another 12 grand on top of that is the normal form. She's in the wrong, but she should probably take action against her lawyers. If she hasn't given them full information, you just, "Oh no, yes, is this your main home, your only home?" "Yes, it is." Well, if that is what she says, she hasn't given them full information, then I'm sorry, she has to go.
It's false representation. She has to go. And I've been onto the government website to see how easy it is to get advice on what your stamp duty should be, and it's really, really simple. It's actually one of the more simple government websites, and gives you all the caveats for these are areas where you can have complexity.
But if also when you know that your tax affairs are complicated and you got in a bit of trouble before. That Lord Ashcroft book about your accounts tax, all of that. She may or may not have done anything wrong in that. She's been, no prosecutions have happened as a result of it, but it was a long time ago. I know what I think happened, and I'm pretty sure most people paying attention to that story know as well. You'd think you'd be extra careful. If you know you're under scrutiny, you've got to be extra careful. Look, things like, I'm vaguely above the parapet, publicly wise, right? I'm not the Deputy Prime Minister of this country. I know people who I'll just put up a shed or put up this, but honestly, I get planning permission to put up anything. I literally go
your
buy.
Pictures. I've seen the application.
Buy the book. I go buy the book deliberately because I don't want anyone to have anything on me because I want to be completely above the book. What is the tax due on that? Fine, that's the tax. I don't. Also, great advice I once had from my dad: you never mess with the tax man. They'll always come back to bite you. Pay your due tax. And this is the other thing. She's a hypocrite. She's not just a chancellor, she's a hypocrite. Because she's the person who's like, "Oh, Tories are all scum, who want low tax and everything." She's the one who says, you don't pay tax. That's money that, it's like Nadeem Sahawi's tax, that's money that's missing from the exchequer. That 40 grand. 40 grand could pay a good nurse's salary, thank you very much, and all the extra national insurance and tax on that. She says one thing and then she acts completely differently in her own private life, and then goes all a bit tearful.
Does a Rachel Reeves. And we're seeing a pattern here the whole way through, and the pattern is just
inadequate women playing the woman card, which I find despicable.
And they're letting themselves down. They're letting women down. They've let the Labour Party down. They're letting Keir Starmer down. They're letting the country down. It's time that these people start to take responsibility and go.
And this is the thing. This is now embarrassing for Keir Starmer. Here's the thing. Do you think he wants her to go? She's a challenger to him. She's also independently elected from him, Deputy Leader Labour Party. He appoints her as Deputy Prime Minister. It doesn't have to. There's no official role. There's no official salary for it. She has a cabinet minister's salary. I think it's an extra 62k or something. Just comes from being the housing secretary. But you don't get paid extra just simply for being Deputy Prime Minister or indeed being Deputy Leader. Now, on one level, he'd want her to give her the heave. Well, exactly. He'd want to give her the heave-ho because she's a threat to him. However, he's got to be seen to be standing by her. But every day he stands by her when the public, and it looks like the early sort of straw polls are suggesting most of the public, frankly, don't think that her story washes. It damages him more. But he can't afford to lose her and possibly at some point his Chancellor. I mean, he's already lost a Transport Secretary. He's lost two Chiefs of Staff.
Well, he's also
Communications Director,
Transport Secretary. He's lost his anti-corruption minister to corruption. You couldn't
claim
make it
corruption allegation. So.
You couldn't make any of this up.
By the way, just in case you're wondering, Labour have only been in power since July last year.
I know.
This is 2 terms worth of scandal. in basically a year.
It's the first scandal for phase 2. Come on, put it into context.
You make a very,
it's
very
the first
fair
scandal
point.
of phase 2.
Very, very fair
so he's only done one now.
I tell you what, if you see how bad phase 1 was and you see how bad phase 2 started, phase 3 is going to be an absolute. Let's go with hoot. I was going to say something show, but you know what I mean. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. Phone lines are already very, very bad. Lots of messages coming in. It's the only show in town, really. It really is. It's the only show in town. I mean, other than, obviously, we need to talk at some point about what Nigel Farage had to say about, us being like North Korea over the arrest of Graham Linehan for some tweets which talked about on the show a lot yesterday, but also the Met chief, as we reported yesterday, Sir Mark Rowley, basically saying, OK, can the politicians please change the law so we know whether or not we're supposed to police tweets rather than streets or not, which frankly I think is a little bit of a questionable thing for him to claim, because mate, you are absolutely able to decide your own priorities. I know this by the fact that you don't bother arresting shoplifters, and it's the law to arrest shoplifters.
Well, also constables, by the very sworn position that they're in, make the decision as to whether an arrest is proportionate and lawful themselves.
Exactly.
And therefore they can't be ordered to make an arrest.
Although from what I can understand from coppers I know very well as friends, that actually a lot of them are just so terrified of the DEI going on in their own police stations that they basically go, it involves trans, oh, we must get involved. Look, I want to hear your thoughts on all of this. I'd like to say the only really good news story this week is that Lush closed its doors for a whole day, all of the stores. Something to do with Gaza, in solidarity with Gaza. They're all a bit like vegan and right on and all that. I have to say, any day when Lush is not stinking out the high street, I have to cross the road rather than go by a Lush, is a good day. Feel free to support Gaza by being closed every single day and just going online, please.
Yeah, I think it's Israel's use of the bath bombs that they bought from Lush to drop on Gaza, which took
I tell you what, Lush bath bombs will be enough to clear any state, I can assure you.
It's a chemical weapon, it's illegal to use.
Genuinely can't go within about 200 yards. The smell is so horrific. Have a great day, Lush staff. You're back at work today, well done, because Gaza's all sorted. Well done. Really, really meaningful protest there. 10:22. These people are just pathetic, aren't they? 10:22 is the time. Want to hear from you. 0344 499 1000. Got lots of texts and tweets to read out. Lots of phones calls already going. Can Rayner survive? Should she resign as Deputy PM? Should she be sacked by the Prime Minister? What do you make of her explanations and the defence? Oh, I'm just a working class woman and mother of a disabled child. Is that a defence of not paying your taxes? Love to hear your thoughts. Give us a call. This is Talk.
I mean, it is absolutely jaw-dropping, isn't it? I wouldn't have put that on X or any other social media platform, not because I think it's that outrageous. It isn't that outrageous, just because I know how pathetic everything has become now. And I would know that if I posted something like that, there'll be half a dozen people who've got nowhere near enough to do trying to get me arrested by the police. And that is exactly, of course, what's happened to him.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, welcome back to the show. It's coming up to 10:26. This is Talk, the Home of Common Sense, from me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. Usual common sense from Philip Ingram as well, still joining me. And lots of common sense from you on the phone lines and on the text and the tweets. Been asking you, should Angela Rayner resign as Deputy Prime Minister? Tell us why she should stay. Tell us why she should go. Love to hear your thoughts on that. Jim says, 100% resign. How can anyone trust that? Alison says, isn't this her third property as Housing Minister, bemoaning the lack of housing for those in need? How does she justify owning more than one property herself? Well, in technicality, she doesn't. She doesn't live full-time in this property in Manchester, where she and her ex-husband share looking after their teenage kids. And she doesn't own the property, the Grace and Favour one in Whitehall. I mean, she hasn't got a property empire. I think that's an unfair allegation, personally. Let's stick to the facts, because there's plenty of facts we can criticise her for. John says the more Starmer tries to save her, the more he's digging his own grave. I agree. Yeah. Guy says, of course, 100%. We've seen resignations for scandals less serious than this, and for people in a less senior position. Time to go, Rayner. And Charlie says, I have to say that by her own and the Prime Minister's own standards, yes, she must, and sooner would be better than later. Ian, though, says she will not resign, and she is in power and will not give it up for anything. Keir Starmer will not sack her. She will ride the storm out. Well, that might be even more fun, mightn't it? Let's talk to Chris, who's on the line in Hereford and giving us a call on 0344 499 1000. Good morning to you, Chris. Should she stay or should she go?
Well, I think she should go, to be honest, because I can't believe how hypocritical this woman is, because 2 or 3 years ago she stacked everybody else off for everybody else off for doing what she's doing now, asking them to resign, sort of thing. So but the only problem is, I think if she does go, does that put pressure on Keir Starmer's premiership? Because if she goes, who else is going to replace her? That's the problem.
Well, there isn't actually a formal role. Not every Prime Minister has a deputy. She'd still be deputy leader of the party, which makes it complicated. But again, it's weakness for him. It doesn't look good for him, having lost a transport secretary, a corrupt anti-corruption minister to a corruption probe, and now there's. And I mean, let's face it. I don't think anyone really thinks that Chancellor Rachel Reeves is going to survive another year.
No, I don't think she will, to be honest. And if she goes, I think it could spell trouble for Starmer. I think this government's an absolute joke, to be honest.
Yeah, absolutely. But do you think she will end up going? Do you think there's anything that this standards advisor could uncover where you can go, oh, actually, yeah, fair enough? Because when you think about Nadeem Zahawi, he had been appointed Chancellor briefly, you know, that little flurry of everyone being Chancellor for the day, when we had that little move around Vic in 22. But he was in dispute with HMRC over tax. He ended up having to pay a lot of tax and then a big fine. But he was in dispute at the time. I mean, you know, and other people might be in dispute, but she insisted he had to go. I thought he had to go as well. I don't think it was tenable for him to be Chancellor at that time. But she called for him to go then. I mean, is that different?
Well, I think it's about the same sort of thing. As you said, he's like basically, he's done what. Well, I don't know what Rayner's done, but he had to resign, and this deputy prime minister she's in a place of power, and she's housing minister as well.
Yeah.
So, and I think it stinks, and to be honest, it's this government's a complete and utter joke, to be honest.
It really is. And again, it's down to, either she's incompetent in an area which is in her own field as your housing secretary, or she's a chancellor, she's dodgy. And either way, I can't see how she survives. And I don't think being a working class woman is a defence for not paying your taxes. Call me old-fashioned. Chris, thank you for that. Let's go to Vernon, who's in Staffordshire. Hello, Vernon. What do you want to say?
Julia, good morning. I love your consistency on these matters.
That's it. I'm not party political on it. That's the thing. You've got to be consistent on these things.
Yeah, you don't sugarcoat anything, do you, Julia? I think it's fantastic. I was laughing in Costa this morning, laughing my head off, because this is the party of service. This is the party that are going to do everything correctly. They've done everything wrong. It's balderdash.
Yeah.
Everything they do, they lie.
Yeah.
Lie.
Well, that's it. You see, Keir Starmer talked a good game, made a lot of promises. I mean, mind you, all these prime ministers do, but, it's going to be competence, it's going to be, sensible government, and it's going to be above board. Well, yeah, how's that working out?
Julia, the King should intervene. Never before has a political party ruled this country by lying to its citizens every single
Vernon,
day.
I hate to tell you, I've been a political journalist for a long time. They all do that, and they all do it every day.
Well, maybe not quite so in the headlights. The reality of it is that, at least with Boris, we knew what he was like. With this man, he says one thing and does something completely different.
Yeah, the interesting thing about Boris Johnson, he kind of never pretended to be anything different, did he? Which is why people gave him a little bit of a free pass. Whereas Keir Starmer stands so prim and proper. And then, can I have some free clothes here, some free clothes there? And then, all this dodgy dealing. Very interesting, Vernon. Thank you very much. I mean, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Can anyone come on to defend Ange? Anyone who wants to defend. Ideally, if you're a working class woman, you do think that you shouldn't have to pay your fair share of tax as well. That would be great to hear too. Do give us a call. I'd love to hear from you. 0344 499 1000. Just some breaking news for you that's just come in the last couple of moments. Paul Doyle, he's the man who has been charged with 31 separate offences related to that crash where a car ploughed into numerous people at the Liverpool Victory Parade back in May of this year. Paul Doyle has appeared in court and he has pleaded not guilty to all charges at Liverpool Crown Court this morning. That happened in the last few moments. He's pleaded guilty. He's appeared in court previously by video phone, but in this case he has pleaded not guilty in person at Liverpool Crown Court. We'll keep you up to date on that case as and when we get it. Going to take a quick break. Up next, going to talk to a former Labour Party official, find out what he makes of Angela Rayner's claims and counter-claims for newspapers. Should she stay or should she go? Love to hear your thoughts. This is Talk.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is indeed Talk, the home of common sense. For me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. 10:35 is the time. Philip Ingram is still with me. He's a former senior intelligence officer, and you've been making your views well known. Lots on social media, lots on text, and your phone calls as well. Pretty much so far saying that Angela Rayner has to go over this £40,000 in unpaid stamp duty on her home purchase. But has she just been a victim of, well, you know, nasty treatment by the media? That's the question. Well, let's put this to Richard Power-Said. He's a former Labour Party official and author and joins us right now. A very good morning to you, Richard.
Good morning, Julia. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you too. Angela Rayner, she's the Housing Secretary. She's had some problems, some questions over previous home purchases. Her own department put stamp duty up to double the rate for second home buyers. You'd think she might have sought some legal advice. She said she did, but she's ended up paying 40 grand less tax than she should have. Should she go?
No, absolutely not. I think she should wait. We should all wait for the independent watchdog to come to its conclusions, and I'm very much hopeful that they're going to find in her favour.
Why should we wait for the independent watchdog where, in this case, when Angela Rayner has called for people to resign long before we've had a report from an independent watchdog for Tories caught up in similar scandals?
So I think it's specifically the Nadeem Zahawi case that people have been talking about. I think it's quite interesting that people, a bit telling that people think that that's a case to compare. You compare these two situations. You've got one which is Angela Rayner transferring her entire life savings over to her disabled son. No, let me finish. And then making this really big mistake of paying the wrong amount of tax after she got the bad advice. So that's the Angela Rayner situation. And then the Nadeem Zahawi situation, where millions of quid that he got from selling his company, he put into an offshore account. Then the ownership of that offshore account's contents moved between different family members for absolutely no reason over several years. And then he managed to pay the wrong amount of tax.
You're saying it's not the same thing? Yeah, it's not the same thing. And I called for Nadeem Zahawi. I called for him to go. I thought it was outrageous. I also thought it was outrageous that Rishi Sunak's wife was claiming to be a non-dom when she lived in this country, was married to the Chancellor, then the Prime Minister, kids at school here. Doesn't pass the smell test for me. Unacceptable. And I don't care. I called for Boris Johnson to go over his failure to register huge amounts in donations from whoever. We weren't quite sure for a quite long time. I'm very clear on this. I am down the line on this. I want our politicians to be whiter than white and to be seen to be white than white. The reality is, she's playing this whole, working class woman, I'm a mother of a teenager, who with disabilities. So I don't think any of that is remotely relevant. She's an intelligent professional woman earning a six-figure salary who's bought homes a couple of times before. She had a complicated tax situation because of this trust. She should have sought proper legal advice, made sure she was on the right side of the law and paid the right tax. Either she didn't give full information to her lawyer, in which case she should go, or she did give full information to a lawyer and he gave the wrong advice, in which case she should probably sue him or report him to the Standards Association for Solicitors, because clearly they're incompetent. All this is all a whole shred of lies.
I think that if somebody makes an honest mistake, then the public and indeed the media have the right to criticise them for making a mistake. She's definitely getting plenty of criticism, but it is an honest mistake. And when you get advice from three different people, I'm taking her at her word. I also think that the alternative seems very unlikely to me. But when I hear that she has got three different pieces of advice telling her that this admittedly very complicated situation with the trust for her disabled son to give him security, when she's got that advice, she then found out that it's the wrong advice. She's immediately gone to the courts to give her permission to talk about it in public. As soon as she's got the right to talk about it legally in public, she's gone to Parliament and given that statement. And
no, she didn't go to Parliament. She went to Sky News and got in a bubble bath with Beth Rigby.
So that wasn't
a political interview.
I don't think anybody could accuse the media of not having been plenty.
I'm sorry,
aggressive.
Sky News and the BBC have totally soft-soaped this story. They're so relieved there's any other story they can cover rather than this, because if it was a Tory minister, they'd have been all over this much quicker. The reality is, she criticised journalists who, at the Telegraph, Mail and Sun, asked questions about. Well, hold on a minute, you've got this property. Well, how much stamp duty did you pay? And are you sure? You know, did you switch and flip properties? And people asking completely legitimate questions as part of their job. She and her department and people on her behalf criticised those journalists, denied there was any wrongdoing. Meanwhile, she's hired a KC to look into it. So while she was criticising journalists and people on her behalf were, she was herself questioning it. That's a bit sodding rich. The Prime Minister went out on Monday afternoon to defend her. On Monday morning, we understand, she'd had the advice from this KC to tell her that there was some serious question marks about her financial affairs. Did she tell the Prime Minister, do you know, that she'd had this KC's report?
I see it very differently, and I think that's a bit unfair, if I'm honest, Julia.
What's unfair?
Let's bear in mind that when she gave this statement, she was very clear that actually all of these specific accusations that had been made against her over the last several days were wrong, right? That was the whole point of the statement. It was saying these specific accusations that have been made against me were wrong, but I have found out that I've made another totally different mistake.
No, there were specific allegations about whether or not she'd paid enough stamp duty, because it was publicly available information that she hadn't. It was publicly available information. It was published in newspapers that she had paid only £30,000 stamp duty on this 80 grand property instead of the £70,000 that would be due if it were her second home.
All of those accusations were based upon completely false readings of the situation with the trust, and she was then forced to reveal all this personal information that I think most people would say she should be allowed to keep it private. She shouldn't have to tell us about the terrible things that happened when her baby was born. She shouldn't have to tell us about how difficult it is to live when you've been divorced and your kid's disabled and you want to give security to your child over
I hate to tell you, no, I've got no requirement for her to tell us about that, but she'd already told us about that. She's done interviews, with the Mirror, a year or two ago, telling us about that, talking about her disabled son. Genuinely, I've asked around my friends who have nothing to do with politics. None of them knew whether she had 1 kid, 2 kid, 3 kid. They knew vaguely she had a kid when she was 16 and that she'd become a grandmother. They knew nothing about any other children. They knew nothing about a divorce. They knew nothing about one of her children being disabled as a result of something happening at birth. That information, though, is some information she has volunteered. She's talked about it in speeches, as she's entitled to do. She talked about it in interviews with, friendly newspapers like the Mirror. I consider politicians' private lives to be private unless there is wrongdoing. And I absolutely believe that politicians' children's privacy is sacrosanct. So she is the one who has breached that privacy. I don't see what her son being disabled as a result of negligence at birth, and she's got this payout from the NHS, we don't know how much in 2020. I don't see what the hell that's got to do with her not paying her full stamp duty.
So it's because she's had because of that family background, the ownership of this house that she co-owned with her now ex-husband got put into a trust, and because of the complications around how you deal with these kinds of trusts, which I think most of us would find pretty complex in terms of tax, that's why she's ended up paying the wrong amount.
No, it's not, because the whole point is we're told this is nesting arrangement. It's part of the divorce. So one of them is in the house with the kids, and then the other one is in the house with the kids, and they both have to have other properties to live in when the other one's in their house. Very nice arrangement that can keep, particularly for a disabled child, so that they can keep the continuity. And the house has been, given lots and lots of refurbishment to make it sure it's suitable for a 17-year-old with, we don't know what his disabilities are. That's the family's business. We have no right to know any of that information. But that doesn't require the house being put into a trust. It doesn't require her to take 162k out of that house. People are saying it's the money from the medical negligence payout from the NHS, or it may just be the equity she had in her quarter of or her half of the home before that case. I don't know. I'm not passing judgment on that. Surely she had...
Can I answer that? Can I answer that, Julia? Because that really, really annoys me. It's a headline that was in the Mail and the Standard. I think it's such a nasty distortion, and it really represents how incredibly biased some journalists are against Angela Rayner. Like, she has she's taken her life savings, basically everything that she owns, and put it into a trust for her son so that he's got security for the rest of her life.
She hasn't. When did she say? No, that's not what she said. That is not what she said. She didn't put her life savings into that trust. She had equity in her home, and so did her husband, and they put it into trust. Many people would argue that's just a way of dodging tax, dodging inheritance tax when they die, just handing it over now. 50% of the property is in trust for the son, and then 25% her husband keeps, 25% she keeps, and she's kind of got the trust to pay her for the 25%. But that's not her putting her life savings into... That's just mums and dads paying for their teenage children, which is like what we all do.
I mean, it's paying for your kid who's disabled to have security in life. And yes, it is, as I understand it, from what I've read, I'm not privy to any specific information, it's pretty much what she's got. And then she, at the same time, as basically handing over enormous amounts to her son for his security in the future, has taken a significantly smaller amount in order to get a deposit on a home, which is the only home she owns, which is this place.
I've made that point repeatedly. Here's the thing. She says she does everything for her kids. She does everything for her kids. She works in London most of the week, and then she goes and sees her kids. They're teenage. We know they're under 18, OK? Yet she's bought a home in Hove. I mean, which is hundreds of miles away. I'm just saying, as the mother of a teenager, I find that a bit weird.
It's so wild that we think that this is a conversation to be having in like a news program.
No, it's none of my business. She's the one who said, everything I've done for the good of my children by buying a home hundreds of miles away, when I'm already hundreds of miles away because of my job. I've got no problem with her doing that. No one questions dads who do that. I've got no question that. But I think most mums, like me, would go, that's a bit strange. But does she get a get-out clause? Because apparently we're all attacking her because she's a working-class woman. I'm not attacking her because she's a working-class woman. I've defended the issue. She's not owning 3 homes, blah, 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 blah. I like Angela Rayner, but she is a hypocrite. And let's face it, it's now shown she's a bit of a chancer.
I tell you what, I don't actually think it is because she's a working class woman.
That's what the Prime Minister claimed.
I think it's because she's a working class woman who's protecting workers' rights from employers. That is what the right wing media hate, and we've seen over and over again how any Labour politician who looks after workers' rights, who tries to get them protections on day one from work, that is what they hate.
I tell you what, protecting workers' rights like that. Well, I tell you what, if you're protecting workers' rights, you know what workers most want? A job in the first place, and there are a few of those about as a result of the policies that she is supporting in this government. Richard Powell-Said, I'm going to give you a little round of applause for a valiant effort to defend Angela Rayner. I don't know how well that's going to work out, but all credit to you for trying. Former Labour Party official and author Richard Powell-Said, very quick response from Philip Ingram, who has laughed out loud as much to that as I did. I mean, all credit to him for trying.
If you've got complex tax matters, I've just checked their website. HMRC have got a very good helpline for stamp duty, and it's open between 0800 and 1700 Monday to Friday, and it's 0300 200 3510 in case Ange is listening, or anyone else. And they will give advice and say, oh, we understand your complexity, that's what you owe.
There you go. There you go, Ange. Or, I mean, she could have just wandered down the road from her department
Rachel and said,
and to the Treasury and said, hello, can you help us with that? Again, you'd think she'd know at least one lawyer given this government. Anyway, I'd love to hear your thoughts, love to hear your response to what Richard Powell-Said said. Honestly, I give credit to anyone who can, with a straight face, say any of that. All credit to him. 10:48 is the time. We're going to take a quick break. Then we're going to be talking about Nigel Farage and what he had to say to American politicians yesterday about the state of freedom of speech in this country. This is Talk.
mean, it is absolutely jaw-dropping, isn't it? I wouldn't have put that on X or any other social media platform, not because I think it's that outrageous. It isn't that outrageous, just because I know how pathetic everything has become now. And I would know that if I posted something like that, there'll be half a dozen people who've got nowhere near enough to do trying to get me arrested by the police. And that is exactly, of course, what's happened to him.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk the Home of Common Sense with me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. Keep those calls are coming in about Angela Rayner. Should she stay or should she go? 0344 499 1000. I think we want to know the answer to that. Bye-bye, Angie. Bye-bye, Angie. Will she, though, or will she hang on? I don't know whether that's going to do any good for the Prime Minister. I think it's damaging either way. What's also damaging is when, you know, Irish comedians getting off planes get arrested for tweets they've written quite a few months ago by 5 armed officers at Heathrow. Well, that's what happened to Graham Linehan, who, by the way, is in court in relation to another case today, which is why he was coming back to the country. This is all about his criticism of trans activists. I would say clearly part of his free speech rights in this country. Not entirely sure why 5 police officers are necessary to arrest a middle-aged comedian for something he's written, given the fact that most shoplifters aren't getting arrested. People are not even being arrested for some pretty horrific assaults and violence and the like routinely on our streets. But hey-ho, the police have their priorities, don't they? Well, the Metropolitan Chief at Police, Sir Mark Roney, says, look, you know, our hands are tied. It's up to politicians to change the law and all of that. Well, the person who's been criticising this the most politically for quite a long time is Nigel Farage, leader of Reform. He was over in Washington yesterday talking to American politicians about the state of freedom of speech in this country, and he raised the case not just of Lucy Connolly, imprisoned for over a year for a tweet, but also that of Graham Linehan. Well, let's talk about that with Amy Gallagher. She's a commentator at the New Culture Forum and joins us once again. Good morning to you, Amy.
Morning, Julia.
Thanks for joining us. First up, let's talk about what did Nigel Farage have to say to those Washington members of Congress about the state of freedom of speech in this country?
Yeah, so he started off by referencing J.D. Vance's speech, which was given in Munich in February of this year, where he really raised the alarm about threats to free speech in Europe and in the UK, referencing particularly the abortion buffer zones. Of course, since then, things have gotten a lot worse, unfortunately. We've seen the censorship of the Online Safety Act here in the UK, the imprisonment of Lucy Connolly and the fact that she lost her appeal to be released early. And then, of course, this recent example, Graham Linehan, that to me is one of the most egregious and authoritarian examples of crackdown on free speech we've ever seen. And that's actually saying a lot. And Nigel Farage made a very good point that Graham Linehan is an Irish citizen. He's not a British citizen. So when he arrived in Heathrow and he was arrested, that effectively could happen to anyone because the tweets he made on X, Twitter, were made in America. So effectively an American person getting off the plane in the UK could be arrested for something they said by exercising their freedom of speech in America several years ago. So now, like, nobody is safe. And he made the point that this is going to have major implications for trade, for tech companies, for media companies. It really is a kind of an emergency situation, and I hope this is a tipping point because I don't know where we go from here.
Well, each time there's a case like this, Alison Pearson, The Telegraph and others, I keep thinking it's going to be a tipping point. It never seems to be. As we see on the left, usually, it is on the woke left, they're very, very much in favour of freedom of speech and people not being cancelled, but it's only for people who they agree with. I'm in favour of everyone having freedom of speech, including people I vehemently disagree with, from not losing their jobs and not certainly facing criminal prosecution. constitution. But it was interesting, one of the politicians hitting back and basically saying, look, we've got attacked by Trump, your big mate Trump, you're about to have lunch with in the White House. We've got him attacking free speech in America. But of course, they've got the First Amendment under their constitution, which does protect freedom of speech.
Yeah, and I mean, this instance of Graham Linehan being arrested, I mean, it sent shockwaves throughout not just the UK, but throughout the American press. I mean, we've seen Fox News covering it. Yeah. Major TV personalities like Ben Shapiro are talking about it. And it is really, I mean, they are all making the point that thank God for their First Amendment rights, because obviously, we don't have that. And it's so concerning. And it is going to actually affect our relationship with America and how we are perceived. It's that bad, and it's so concerning, and it's so embarrassing.
I was just going to say it's embarrassing, but it's also deeply sinister. But what is really interesting is we reported this on the show yesterday. The head of the Metropolitan Police, the most senior police officer in the country, Sir Mark Rowley, he blamed politicians for putting his officers, he say, in an impossible position over online speech. He defended the 5 officers, and the quote, they were armed. The officers at Heathrow would be armed for arresting Linehan. And again, it's over tweets. But I'd say the worst one they could even remotely claim was clearly a joke about how women should punch transgender women, i.e. trans-identified men, in the balls if they use women-only spaces like toilets. I mean, again, it's quite a funny joke. The point is they say they're women, but they've actually got testicles and it would hurt. I mean, it's a joke. So obviously. But Sir Mark said, a threat to punch someone from a protected group. Oh, men, you mean, men, could be an offence, he said, but I understand the concern caused by such incidents given different perspectives on the balance between free speech and the risks of inciting violence in the real world. When it comes to lesser cases where there is ambiguity in terms of intent and harming, policing has been left between a rock and a hard place by successive governments. He says they are required to follow all lines of inquiry and take action as appropriate. Well, that's a load of nonsense, isn't it? Because they don't follow all lines of inquiry. If your bag's stolen, if your phone's stolen, if your bike's stolen, if your home's broken into, if a shoplifter is. I could probably name 50 people that I know who the police have taken no action, followed no line of inquiry whatsoever when they've been the victim of a crime. But apparently when it's a tweet, they've got no choice. This just doesn't fly with the reality we all live with, does it?
No, it's true. I mean, I agree with Sir Mark Rowley to a point in that there does need to be a change in the law and the way the legislation is written, because it's written in such a subjective way that, I mean, for example, Graham Linehan was charged with inciting violence, and the way that's written is that it's whether you make someone be fearful, which is entirely subjective. So there is a point to be made about the way that these laws are drafted, but the police are responsible for this as well, because it's their exercising their judgment of what's proportionate or not proportionate.
Yeah. And clearly reading those tweets, anyone with half a brain would go, this isn't proportionate. Go away, the probable trans activist who reported him. Stop wasting police time.
There needs to be a total change within the Met Police. And there needs to be training about freedom of speech. We know that trans ideology has totally taken over the policing, which is probably why they acted so extreme in this instance. We never see them act that way with trans activists when they say decapitate TERFs.
Yeah, and they literally stand in front of cameras, showing their faces, saying, rape TERFs, punch TERFs. Yeah, apparently that's a bit more nuanced. It's weird, isn't it? Anyway, Amy Gallagher, you've always been a voice of reason on this, commentator at the New Culture Forum. Thank you very much. I'll get Philip Ingram's thoughts on this as well coming up in the next half hour. I want to hear from you, 0344 499 1000. I want to know, should Angela Rayner stay or should she go? Your call. This is Talk.
My message to people smugglers is this. I think smashing the gangs is a deterrent. Smash the gangs. Smash the people smuggling gangs.
People schmiggling puns.
He couldn't even smash an avocado for a piece of toast.
Or the people... What would that... The people...
I think smashing the gangs is a deterrent. Well, it might be if you smashed any, if you found any.
The people smash... The smash...
And he hasn't smashed anything. I mean, literally all he does is he smashes records every sort of couple of weeks, where more and more people come in a period of 24 hours.
Smash.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Very, very good morning. Welcome back to the show. Fast approaching 3 minutes past 11 o'clock this morning. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. This is Talk. We are the home of common sense. And whether you're listening on DAB+ radio or on your smart speaker, watching on YouTube or your connected device, thank you very much indeed for joining us. Don't forget, if you miss anything on the show, you can go straight to my YouTube page, The Julia Hartley-Brewer Show. Hit subscribe. You never have to miss a thing. Certainly, if you've just tuned in, you've absolutely missed a belter from Richard Power Said. He's a former Labour Party official who was absolutely to the T defending Angela Rayner and basically saying she's made as an honest mistake when she failed to pay the full stamp duty on her home that she bought in over 800 grand home. I know a lot of us were going, wow, how has she afforded that? Well, she took some money out of a house that she, in a trust that she owned with her ex-husband, which is now in trust for her son and daughter, and so 2 sons, younger sons, and she has now admitted, after many days of scrutiny and denying that anything had gone wrong, she's now admitted dodging up to £40,000 in tax after not paying the full stamp duty on the house purchase, despite the fact that she is, last time I looked, the Housing Secretary and might perhaps have some access to legal advice on such an issue. Now, the Deputy Prime Minister made a tearful apology as she joined Beth Rigby of Sky News in a bubble bath yesterday. It certainly wasn't a political interview, that's for sure. The Tory leader, though, at PMQs, as we played on the show yesterday, Kemi Badenoch, called for Keir Starmer to grow a backbone and to sack her. Well, Angela Rayner is still getting the backing of the likes of Rachel Reeves, the Chancellor, who says she has full confidence in her colleague to remain as Deputy Prime Minister. I mean, given that Rachel Reeves doesn't even have full confidence in her own CV, I find that a little bit underwhelming, with all due respect, Chancellor. Coming up in this hour, we're also going to be talking about Rachel Reeves dismissing claims that there is a £50 billion black hole in public finances. This after the cost of a long-term government borrowing rose to a 27-year high on Tuesday. We're also going to be talking about the migrant who sexually assaulted a teenage girl, a 17-year-old, and then thank Britain for looking after him. Makes your blood boil, doesn't it? But there we are. Just some breaking news involving Angela Rayner before I get to the telephone number for you to call. The flat that she did buy, the 3-bedroom flat, 800k beachfront place she bought in Hove near Brighton, which has been the subject of this stamp duty inquiry, has been vandalised with graffiti. As you'll be able to see if you're watching on our YouTube page, it's got this white stucco, but on the pillars and the balustrade outside, someone has painted tax evader and a word beginning with B and ending with itch, which I can't say on air. With some sort of spray paint, and across the road, construction shipboard has been adorned with graffiti saying "Tax evader Rayner" and "Rayner tax avoidance." Wonder what you make of that. I want to know from you. She's admitted dodging 40 grand in tax. It's all an honest mistake. She got advice from a lawyer. It turned out to be the wrong advice. No mention of her taking action against a lawyer. Or, Angela Rayner, did you accidentally on purpose not giving the full info on your tax arrangements and your trust arrangements? We're asking whether she should resign as Deputy Prime Minister or not. Maybe indeed whether the Prime Minister should sack her. Tell us why she should stay. Tell us why she should go. Give us a call. 0344 499 1000 is the number. You can get in touch on text on 87222. You can also send us a message on X at talkTV. Calls are charged at the national rate and text cost 1 standard network rate message. Delighted to say, still joining me today is Philip Ingram, former senior military intelligence officer. Good morning to you.
Good morning again.
Just before we go into everything else, the vandalising of her building. Now, I would never. That's very intimidating.
It's unacceptable.
It's unacceptable. It's a shared building, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
You know, damaging property. It's a criminal act. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. You know, action straight away. Mm-hmm. A bit surprised. You'd think there'd be some sort of security, some sort of. You know, they'd set up cameras. I don't know what sort of level of security she has. But that's certainly unacceptable. Mm-hmm. We go through the legal processes, guys. You can call her that if you want, although calling her a tax evader, technically speaking, you're accusing her of a crime. Mm-hmm. It's technically liable unless she has actually committed a crime. She's definitely a tax dodger. But what do you make of graffiti?
Well, I think the graffiti is one step too far, but I think it's reflecting the feeling that there is amongst the
public
population
anger.
And the public anger, and it's everything that's coming in. Keir Starmer's not realising just how much is bubbling beneath the surface surface, and tiny little things like this could push it above it. And no matter what the answer is, if Angela Rayner manages to prove that she's done everything right, the damage has been done to Keir Starmer.
Well, the problem is, isn't it? Like, because what she did, everything, it wasn't criminal. What she did wasn't wrong when it came to the purchase of her council house that she had many years ago. It was exposed in Lord Ashcroft's. But again, it leaves a smell. I mean, I've got my own views on that. Whether it was wrongdoing or criminal or tax dodging, the main reason nothing happened was because it was many years on. But no, I was living in this house. Well, all the neighbours said you weren't. Yeah. And I think I don't know why an 80-year-old neighbour for 20 years would be lying about that.
In dealing with all these things, whenever you get a solicitor or you get accountants to do something without having to submit figures that you have given yourself into them, you have to sign a certificate to that professional organisation to say that everything that you have provided is completely open and honest.
And I've declared all relevant information.
Correct.
If you are in that situation, I mean, seriously, you're the housing secretary. This is a housing tax. You yourself run a department where they have doubled the stamp duty for people purchasing a second home. You owned a home, you've got a grace and favour free apartment at the Admiralty as Deputy Prime Minister. You own a home, this whopping big home in Manchester, and she had she and her husband own it. They get divorced. She's got a disabled son. She's got an older son who's in his late 20s. She's got 2 teenage children. Again, her personal business is her personal business. Her divorce is her business. I don't care. I don't want to know. The only things I know about it are things she has told us about it. She said she didn't want to have to divulge it, but she's given many a speech and interview before where she's talked about her children. There was a medical negligence claim against the NHS, which she constantly praises as how wonderful it is. The whole time, for 11 years, she was suing them for medical negligence over the injuries to her son at birth many years ago. She got that payout in 2020. It turns out they got wealth advice, wealth management fund, so we tell them what to do. They put the property that her and her husband own into a trust fund to benefit her children, particularly her son, because it's modified for him for his disabilities. And then she basically, to buy this property, she basically got bought out by the trust of her quarter, 162k of what she had left in this property fund. I mean, I don't think it's fair to say she took money from the negligence payout. I don't think that is fair to say. She took out her equity from the home as a deposit to buy a new home. I don't know why a woman who's got kids who are teenagers in Manchester and works in London most of the year
wants to live in Hove.
Why she's got a home in. I'm a mum. I'm not sure that would work for me, for my arrangements to be around my kid when she was at school. But and I'm not sure that's what most mums would be doing. But that's between her and her family. That's her business. It's none of my business until she uses that as the excuse for not paying the correct tax. But the idea that the housing secretary, who has a housing policy about stamp duty being charged more for people who are second homeowners, lambasts people for buying second homes when other people can't even afford one. And it may not legally, technically be financially her second home, depending on how the HMRC, but she has more than one home to live in, which is, there are people desperately trying to get to buy a 1-bedroom flat right now who can't get on the housing market, and there she is buying a 3-bedroom home. She's someone who has criticised every single Tory politician and everyone else for their financial affairs, and in my view rightly called people like Nadeem Zahawi to resign over his taxpayers' unpaid tax. But so did I. Rishi Sunak's wife being a non-dom, unacceptable, and I said it at the time. Nadeem Zahawi, I said it to his face. I mean, I am consistent on this, but she's not. She's a hypocrite. It's one rule for her, working class mum of a disabled child, which seems to be her excuse for everything. Yep. And one rule for everyone else. Well, you're either up to the job, sweetheart, or you're not. Yeah.
And, through a loophole for ministers, a tax loophole for ministers, she doesn't pay benefit in kind tax for her grace and favour home in London, which anyone else would do.
Yeah, anyone else in your job, you got given a second home to live in.
Deputy Prime Minister is not a formal appointment, so why is she entitled to grace and favour home for that? And a housing secretary isn't important enough to get a grace and favour home.
Because she's Deputy Prime Minister, and there are a number of propities, the Chevenings and things like that.
But that's
up to the Prime Minister to fund.
It is, but we've got the Chancellor coming after people who are on the breadline for more taxes, and we've got ministers who are getting away with loopholes and benefits in kind that any of us would have to pay if we did the same.
The rules
are
completely different, absolutely. I mean, this is the thing. There's a whole load of hypocrisy over this, isn't it? But the thing that most frustrates me is her and her allies criticising journalists for doing their job.
Exactly.
She wouldn't have gone to a KC to get this advice to go, oh, it turns out I haven't paid 40k in tax I was due. There wouldn't be a referral. She did the right thing. She referred herself to the standards advisor. Well, if she hadn't referred herself, someone else would. That's like someone being caught on CCTV, murdering someone and thinking, oh, aren't they good? They went to the police station themselves. No, they were going to be caught. Seriously. You don't get any credit for that.
She just wanted a bubble bath with Beth.
Well, she was a bubble bath. It was. Talk about soft soap interviews. Genuinely, it's genuinely embarrassing. And I know a number of people at Sky who also agree with me on that, by the way. But then the Prime Minister defends her, and even he says how proud he is of her, going on about her being working class. I think her journey, and it's God, I sound like someone on, here I am, I'm applying for the X Factor, my journey. But to come from growing up on a council estate, and not just that, being a carer for her mentally ill mother, she had bipolar, from the age of 10. She said I was basically always the mum. Then, getting knocked up at 16, but having a kid, and instead of just going, well, I'm going to go on a life of benefits and be a victim, she worked as a carer, became, a shop steward, worked at uni, became an MP, became the Deputy Prime Minister of this country. I've got nothing but admiration for her in terms of what she has done. And there are very few people who've managed to do that. Look, most of my friends, my husband, have come from working class backgrounds who've made good. But that journey has been a very long, difficult journey. And I've got nothing but admiration and respect for her for that. But that's not an excuse for not paying your taxes and not seeking the correct legal advice when you are surrounded every single day by experts in that field and lawyers. I'm sorry, if I want advice on a property issue or an employment issue or something like that, I've got enough friends or colleagues I could ask. I'm pretty sure the Deputy Prime Minister could ask someone do you think I should seek top advice on this? What's the best barrister on this topic, just to make sure that I'm absolutely paying the right amount of tax? That's what any sensible person would do. And the fact that she didn't do that says to me she's either been trying to deliberately dodge the tax, gotta go, or she's too incompetent to pay the right tax. Gotta go.
Yeah. And if you look at what she's done to other people when she was in opposition, she's been vitriolic. She hasn't gone...
Scum.
Yeah, exactly. She hasn't gone, oh, this is unacceptable, and therefore I think you should resign.
Let's wait for the standards advisor to report.
Keir Starmer called Rishi Sunak indecisive for not making instant decisions and sacking immediately. Keir Starmer, by his own definition, is being indecisive by waiting for.
Do you think this is going to damage? Now, Keir Starmer, look, the Deputy Prime Minister is in a role that's in his hands. Deputy Leader, look, that's her role. She was elected to that. Unless she resigns from Deputy Leader, she would still be the Deputy of the party, even if he got rid of her. Realistically, he's already. He's got poll ratings like the worst ever. He's 15 points behind Reform in the national electoral polls. Phase 2 has just started on Monday. It's all going swimmingly well so far. He's lost a Transport Secretary over some very questionable claims about a mobile phone being stolen in a previous job. He's lost his anti-corruption minister to a corruption probe, for goodness sake, in Bangladesh, and lots of question marks about whether his Chancellor Rachel Reeves can survive past this next budget. I've got a funny feeling he's just using her as, frankly, she is just like a sort of human shield for him right now, so we can all focus attention on her. But he can't realistically sack Angela Rayner, because as much as he might want to, because he's tried to, you pointed out earlier, tried to get rid of her before, she is such a threat to him and his leadership of the party. But secretly, do you not think he'll be quite chuffed that she's in difficulty?
Oh, I think he would be chuffed, but he not at this time, because if you look at what Keir Starmer's done in the reset, he's brought...
There was a reset.
He's brought proper economists in to give him advice. His economist-in-chief to give him advice is his Chancellor of the Exchequer, and he's built that little private team up which says that Rachel Reeves is going to be pushed out at some stage in the future. He can't afford to lose both.
Yeah, he set up basically a rival treasury because he doesn't trust her. And who would? Again, Rachel Reeves, you just expressed confidence in Angela Rayner. Again, can't express confidence in her own CV. There's just so many question marks. And again, as I said earlier, I don't know why Angela Rayner didn't go to a solicitor that she knows in well. Business Secretary Jonathan Reynolds, he kept claiming in various places that he was a solicitor.
Well, did she stand by?
Yeah. I mean, again, this is the thing. We are talking. I mean, it's interesting. Bridget Phillipson, the Education Secretary, was out doing the rounds about something to do with nursery places. I don't know. No one was asking her about that, but she's come out and she knows that Angela Rayner was one of her big allies. Yeah. But she'll also but all of these people, by the way, all think they'll be Prime Minister one day.
Yes,
they all totally and utterly overestimate their own abilities, and she'll be thinking, oh, this is my chance, you know. But I'll be loyal. I'll be loyal. There is so much being played out here. This is Shakespearean in terms of what's really going on.
As they're smiling and patting you in the back with one hand, that hand that's patting the back is checking which vertebrae to insert the next knife
absolutely.
into.
Well, so let us know. I want to hear your thoughts. 0344 499 1000. Should she stay or should she go? For me, the hypocrisy on this in terms of how she's treated other people, and the hypocrisy on tax, but also for me, playing the woman card, the working class card, the disabled child card.
That's pathetic.
It's shameful. It's actually shameful, and frankly, an insult to every working class person and indeed every woman in this country.
And an insult to what she's actually achieved through her own ability.
Exactly. Look, let's talk about a couple of other topics before we go to a break then, get the calls up. Interesting that Robert Jenrick, he's done an interview. This is ahead of Tory party conference. All party conferences coming up. Reform is up this weekend. But he is basically, I suppose, moved ahead of Kemi Badenoch, who's we're expecting to announce a sort of rather tougher immigration policy and perhaps deportations, perhaps ECHR announcement. It's been very slow. It's been really, really like, just sort of grinding the wheels to get to any proper Tory policies, and there's no doubt Tory reform have stolen, absolute steal on them. But Robert Jenrick, the Shadow Justice Secretary and of course rival for the leadership, he's welcomed Nigel Farage's plan for mass deportations. He's supported that, and he's also talking about how what we need is a decade of net emigration, not net immigration. We've seen, it's 700, 600, 800,000. Doesn't matter what it is. It's off the scale. Before Blair came in, we were looking at sort of 30,000 a year. This is just on a different scale. He's basically saying we need to have more people leaving the country every year, which was the norm actually in the post-war years, than coming to the country. I mean, 100% from me.
Yeah, well, just give everyone Irish citizenship, because the Irish are brilliant at going and populating the rest of the world, and opening Irish bars and getting everything else going. So there's a way around it. But no, I agree with them completely. We need to go to mass deportations of people that are coming into this country illegally. That'll stop it.
And people staying in this country.
And people staying in this country beyond.
I completely get, though. I would not be prioritising a woman and her 4-year-old child as priority. But however, you also don't want to open up routes for the smugglers to go, OK, we're just going to send in people with pretend they're married, pretend they've got their kid. I mean, you are creating a whole heap of other problems if you do that. Everyone's going to go. But yes, our priorities will be anyone who's committed a crime or anyone who's arrived over on the boats or on the lorries. But then, yes, people who've come here, and if you've come in the last couple of years and you're doing dodgy work, you're out. But also, if you've been living here 20 years and you set up a family, and I don't know how you're working legally and paying tax. I've got some question marks about that if you're not here legally. How does that work? You've got fake papers. I mean, you are a criminal at that point. I am willing to have a system where there is an applications and we allow people to say, look, I've been a good member of the community, I've not committed any crimes, and people can sign, neighbours and your employer or whatever can say, actually this is a good family, and they are part of the community. I'm perfectly happy for that position, but then we will legalise you, but there will be a penalty for that. There has to be some sort of penalty, but that should be the minority, not the majority. And I'm really happy to have a simple statement. We're going to give you a couple of months, sort your plans out, we'll help fund your departure, $2,500 for you, but bye-bye, you're not welcome here. I don't know why anyone thinks that should be controversial.
Yeah. It's not controversial. There should be a scoring system for people, whether if they're allowed to stay on visas here. You come in some form of temporary visa, you're then assessed on your financial ability to
what is your contribution?
Yourself. What's your contribution? But it's not just financial contribution, it's also your contribution to society.
Yeah.
Are you staying isolated in a little group and not contributing to British society in bringing multicultures together?
Are you marching against Israel every week in a burqa? I'm thinking maybe you're not an added bonus to the country.
If you can't speak English, if you're not contributing to your local community, if you're not contributing to society, then I'm sorry, you should not be allowed to stay.
Bye. I mean, just bye. Thanks for coming. As I would expect any country to deport me if I'd done the same. Yeah, exactly. Just finally, before we move on, just finally, I mean, this is a rather big story. In addition to Lush, they called a cosmetic shop. It's just very smelly bath bombs and creams that you have to keep in the fridge. I know this because I had a teenage daughter, and therefore, of course, this stuff had to be in the home. But I literally say, I cannot go and buy it because it's so disgusting. They closed up shops, all their shops, for 24 hours, they say, in solidarity with what's happening in Gaza. I mean, I didn't hear anything about releasing the hostages, but there we are. As my view, as I said earlier, any day when Lush is not stinking up the high street is a good day for me, because those stores absolutely
and it's very expensive.
Stink. They are, I mean, literally horrific stores. But if people want to spend their money in them, fair enough. And if they want to spout their nonsense, fair enough. But close. I think if you really want to show solidarity with Palestinian people in Gaza, I'd close all 365 days a year. That's my top tip. Then I'd really believe you. But we're told that Britain could, in the next month, in October, ahead of that United Nations meeting, recognise the Palestinian state. That no one knows what the borders are, who'd be in charge, or anything.
Any of it.
While Hamas still holds hostages, there's been no demand. The demand's on Israel, but no demand on Hamas, a terrorist organisation, to release all of the hostages, dead and alive. Some 50, we think, still there. Some 20 still alive. It's hoped still alive. I mean, I would be so horrified if Britain did that. So basically, a reward for the October the 7th massacre. That's what that would be.
It completely horrifying. And the reward for the 7th of October massacre is not something that we're saying. It's not something that the right-wing media is saying. It's something that Hamas has said.
Yeah.
And they said it justifies what we did.
Yeah.
And therefore, what that's going to do is that's going to lead to similar actions in different places, and it's going to put not just foreign citizens at risk, it's going to put British citizens at risk.
But also all Hamas attacks, the reason why people are upset about this is because civilians dying in Gaza. The only reason civilians are dying in Gaza is because of Hamas's actions.
Correct.
And their refusal to hand back the hostages, and the fact they've got a whole network of tunnels that they hide in, but they will not allow civilians to hide in. They actively, not like aren't bothered if their civilians die, they actively want and force their civilians into a position where they will die by using them as a human shield. So you're actually encouraging terrorist groups to make sure as many civilians die as possible. And we've got... And again, people think Keir Starmer's supposed to be a clever bloke. I mean, genuinely, this is so stupid and immoral and dangerous. It's shocking.
A challenge to people out there: find one single video that's been posted out on any of the press that shows a Hamas fighter been taken into a hospital, and find me all the videos that reports that say every hospital's been destroyed, and then the next day there's people.
And I'd love to see some footage of all that time when those the IDF and under Gaza Humanitarian Force have been firing indiscriminately on civilians. Because again, still haven't seen a single video of that, but it's reported every single day on BBC, Sky and ITV as if it was fact, and yet no evidence of it whatsoever. Anyway, your thoughts on all the big topics, but I want to hear from you about Angela Rayner. Should she stay or should she go? Give us a call, 0344 499 1000. Your call's up next. This is Talk.
mean, it is absolutely jaw-dropping, isn't it? I wouldn't have put that on X or any other social media platform, not because I think it's that outrageous. It isn't that outrageous, just because I know how pathetic everything has become now. And I would know that if I posted something like that, there'll be half a dozen people who've got nowhere near enough to do trying to get me arrested by the police. And that is exactly, of course, what's happened to him.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Very good morning. Welcome back to the show. 11:28 is the time. Let's get straight to your calls. Coming in thick and fast of Angela Rayner. Let's talk to Peggy, who is in Essex. Hello, Peggy. What do you want to say?
Hello, Julia. Yes, of course you should go. I'm sick to death of these people fiddling the books like they do. She's come into power. She's supposed to have pulled herself up by bootstraps, a working class. I'm sick to death of that bloody, when they say that. Everyone who works for a living is working class. You've either got working class or idle class.
Well, no, I mean, we know there's a difference. We know, there's people working class, middle class. I mean, I'm like you, I'm really impressed, with the journey she's been on in her life, how well she's done in life. But it's the idea that somehow the journalists shouldn't criticise and other politicians shouldn't criticise her because she was born working class. I find that a bit weird.
So do I. And keep saying a woman's got this far. Yeah. How many women have got on in this world without all the leg up that she's at?
Margaret Thatcher. I mean, she didn't. I mean, she wasn't born in a gas station, but she wasn't born with a silver spoon in her mouth either, was she?
No, and she was highly intelligent. How do we know about this Angela Rayner? She's got on because she's got all them unions behind her, and she should go because look at the people that are in prison because not paying their council tax, not paying their television licence, not paying their income tax, and they can't afford it. She knew exactly what she was doing. Don't tell me them lawyers are wrong because I won't have it.
Well, again, if she gave full information to the lawyers that she spoke to, apparently 3, or tax advisors, she gave full information to them. Like, look, I don't know if this is relevant or not, but look, this is what we did for my son and this trust. If she gave them full information in writing, I want proof of it. You're crazy if you're not doing this stuff in writing. And then they came back saying, no, you're definitely still only due 30 grand in stamp duty, not 70 grand, then I would have a lot of sympathy for her if she has gone. But I just want to flag this because I think this might be an issue. But if she didn't give them full information, I mean, then they haven't done anything wrong and she is entirely in the wrong and she has to go.
Of course she does. The thing is, she's gone into Parliament, she's seen all them in the past and now at the present time, they've all got their fingers in the till. They're all at it, and she thinks, well, I'll get away with it because I'm in favour. I'm flavour of the month. They won't. I'm a working class woman.
She'd probably have got away with it if she wasn't so prominent. That's the interesting thing. But again, I don't think they are all at it, and it's really important that whoever they are, of whatever party and however much money it is, like when we had the expenses of people claiming, bath plugs and stuff, that we do actually, hold them to account because I don't want to go down the route where we live in somewhere like Italy, Berlusconi, and that be completely corrupt. We need to keep on top of this stuff. Peggy, thank you for that. Heartfelt views there. Kit is on the line in Kent, but Kit, you actually want to defend Angela Rayner.
Yes, I do.
Brave.
Which goes against my nature because I loathe the Marxists. Okay. They're a party of grievance.
Yeah.
Okay. So they've attracted, it goes back to Brown, anyone who has a deep grievance and, traumatised. They are a group of very traumatised people, I think.
Okay.
I think we need more, rather than prisons, we need to build a lot more mental health asylums.
For people who... Why are you defending... Let's come on to this topic. Why are you defending Angela Rayner?
I am because she sold her property It's called. You need to differentiate the words home and property.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's defined as a home in a divorce settlement. The family home.
But she sold her stake in the home in Manchester, so her name's still on the deeds. But she said, "Look, I took my money out of that property."
So she sold that. She gifted some of it and sold some of it, and then she purchased another property, like many people in that situation do. They, in a divorce, separate, divide their assets and stuff. And she's bought herself another property.
And no one's got a problem with that.
No,
but you have to pay the stamp duty due on that property.
So the advice she got, this is something that it brings up an issue that we're all prone to, is seeking advice, and there's a lot of bad advice there. So who knows, that the KC that gave her the up-to-date advice that she owes that 40k, he might be wrong.
He's less likely to be wrong, given that he's an expert in the field. But she says, she said she had a lawyer advise her, but she didn't say, I told the lawyer my full circumstances. My guess is she just made assumptions, maybe. Let's give the benefit of the doubt. Oh, I didn't realise it was relevant. As far as I'm concerned, I didn't own another property because I got the money out of that property already, so it wasn't an issue. But she's the housing secretary. She's had some questions raised about her finances and her housing arrangements before. It would be a competence issue to raise it.
Of our parliament, our government, it brings up total incompetence.
Yeah. So why are you defending her? She's either trying to dodge tax or she's incompetent.
And Truss brought this up. You had, I think Truss was on earlier. Yeah, and she brought this up, that and it's very much a Brown thing. They've created all these quangos, and they're all grievances. And
what's that got to do with Angela Rayner?
Single one of them has A-level maths.
Well, yeah. I mean, there is that. Kit, I'm going to have to leave it because I'm over time. But thank you for that. That's Kit. She's, I think, defending Angela Rayner, but she didn't do anything wrong. Yeah. But you haven't. The thing is, Philip Ingram, joining us throughout the show. The reality is, things like, oh, I didn't know I couldn't park here, isn't an excuse unless the signage is deliberately unclear.
Ignorance of the law is no defence.
It's not a defence. It's your job to get right advice.
And when you are the minister responsible for the law around housing
and stamp duty,
and you have to speak to the Chancellor of the Exchequer and her department on a daily basis about tax, and you've got access to the best lawyers in the country for free.
Yeah, I mean, they might not be able to give you formal advice, but they might say, you probably want to.
But if you want formal advice, the HMRC free phone line is 0300 200 3510, and that's for stamp duty.
There you are, Angie. You see, you could have just called them. In fact, save all that money on the KC. 11:35 is the time. I'm going to take a quick break. Can't wait to get more of your calls on air. 0344 499 1000. Up next, we're going to be talking about a little bit more about the stamp duty with David Buick, and also about where we are with the economy. Is there a £50 billion black hole or not? Because Rachel Reeves says there isn't, but then Rachel Reeves doesn't even know whether or not she won a chess tournament. But there we are. This is Talk, the home of common sense.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk, the Home of Common Sense. 11:37 is the time. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. Philip Ingram's still with me. Delighted to be joined right now by David Buick, financial advisor, market commentator at Aquis Exchange and friend of the show. A very good morning to you, David. Can you hear me? Hello.
Empress, top of the morning to you. Lovely to chat to you.
Very lovely to speak to you.
I can hear you very well, Empress. Greetings.
Thank you very much indeed. Still waiting for that job title, but there we are. Maybe Deputy Prime Minister might be up for grabs soon. I don't know. What is your take? First of all, I want to talk about the economy generally, because that's kind of, you know, what affects all of our taxes, not just Angela Rayner's stamp duty. What do you make of the mess Angela Rayner has got herself into, and do you think she should have to go or not?
Unlike many others, I'm not actually levitating 3 inches above the carpet over this. I think there are much more important issues. Julia, the one thing I would say is the level of hypocrisy knows no bounds. I mean, it's just appalling. Particularly, she was an attack dog at every single Tory, at every opportunity. And also, you know, exactly, if you look at Louise Haigh, Tulip Sadiq, and go back to Peter Mandelson twice, hardly the paragons of virtue when it comes to this stuff.
Yeah.
But the one thing that I want cleared up more than anything else, and then there may be a case that she has to go, is the timing. Now, as far as I'm concerned, I have the deepest sympathy with her over her family, her son who is blind.
Well, okay, I don't think she's even put that into the public domain, actually. I mean, he's disabled.
Yeah, but I mean, I've you know, that is a desperate situation. But from what I've been told and what I've read and listened to sensible people like you, is the order of which this has happened. When the purchase of the £800,000 flat in Brighton came up, or Hove, wherever it was, there was a human outcry from the media. The media wanted details. They wanted the drains up. They wanted to know exactly whether it was absolutely
Well, no one could work
okay.
out. Why is she buying a place in Hove, not a constituency, not in London, not near her kids? And where did she get 100k from? I think those are reasonable questions.
Perfectly reasonable questions. But what I want to know is the order of what happened. Clearly, she was rumbled to the fact that there was a £40,000 shortfall. Now, did she speak to her second?
Oh, he's frozen. David, hopefully we can get... Oh, David, we got you back. Sorry, you were going to say, did she speak to her second... We lost you.
Lawyer about the tax situation because she was rumbled, or because she realised that there was a mistake. And I think this is where it tells. And I think Sir Laurie Magnus, in his capacity as the standards watchdog, will tell us exactly what this form is.
Yeah.
If everything is in order, I think we suggest we move on. But it does leave a very bad taste in my mouth.
Well, of course, if everything's in order. As I said, if she's got a letter from her lawyer saying, look, you give me all the information, and I think that you only due 30 grand in stamp duty, that's fine. If she didn't give all the information, I'm sorry, then it's on her. But she can't call for other people in similar situations to go and then say, oh, no. Look, I'm working class and I've got a disabled son, so I shouldn't have to go.
You can't play that card anymore.
She has.
Very boring and very, very unsatisfactory. No, you can't play that at all. And, the thing is, we need to know exactly the timing of this thing as far as I'm personally concerned.
Yeah, that's the key thing. Okay, and also, don't criticise journalists for asking questions and then those questions arose. And then you actually seek advice and it turns out the questions were perfectly fair. But there we are. I'm sure we would all agree that the people whoever it was, who sprayed graffiti on her home, the house of the home where she's got a 3-bedroom flat in Hove, calling her a tax evader and then the B word, absolutely unacceptable and criminal. And I very much hope they are arrested and charged very soon. Let's bring it on to Rachel Reeves, who interestingly this morning has given her full confidence, and she has full confidence in Angela Rayner. I'm not sure that will give Angela Rayner much confidence herself. But whether we have full confidence, whether you have full confidence as someone who understands these things better than most of us in the budget, we know now it's going to be on the 26th of November. Very late for a budget. It was October last year, but to be fair, they'd just come into office in July, and apparently they found this £22 billion black hole. We're now told by many experts that there's a £50 billion black hole. Is there?
Well, the answer is that it's only an opinion. The black hole, the £22 billion, when we had the drains up, we realised that Labour was responsible for half of it, which was the increase in salaries for all the public sector workers, which came in at around £13 billion. Now, there's no question of doubt, because the level of yield now I'm going to try and explain this very simply, is the fact is that the black hole is caused by the amount of money you get in from revenue against the amount of money that you actually have to pay out or borrow. And that is the black hole if there was one.
Yeah.
Now, there's no question of any doubt of whoever was responsible for that spurious 22 billion black hole. It's sure as hell by the 26th of November, it's going to be a hell of a lot bigger than 22 billion.
Yeah.
Whether it's 30 billion, whether it's 50 billion is pure conjecture. All I can say, which worries the pants off me, are three things. First and foremost, when I consider that there are 9.2 million people economically inactive in this country, which is 21% of the population, when I consider there are 3 million people drawing permanent health disability, currently costing us £40 billion a year, which will cost us by 2032 £80 billion a year.
Ouch.
I am a worried man.
Yeah.
And what has happened, because this government cannot spell, let alone implement, cuts in public expenditure, which is absolutely a prerequisite if we're ever going to see growth again. And it's really, really important. And what we do know is that, and this I find absolutely fascinating, we've had 5 cuts in interest rates since Labour came in July of last year. Bond yields gone up.
Yeah.
And now when you look at the 30-year, it's about 5.6%. If you look at the 10-year, it's about 4.7%, very roughly. It might be a little bit lower since you and I spoke. But the fact remains is, believe it or not, these are higher levels than when Liz Truss had that
and they're higher than, Greece is paying. Can you explain, because I think most of us who don't play the money markets won't have a clue, like why the bond yield, for gilts, or, why that has an impact on us. Can you explain Janet and John it for me?
Yeah, no, it's quite simple in a way, but I think people need to know the size of it. When dear old Ken Clarke, the Ken and Eddie show, going back to 1997, before Gordon Brown became the Chancellor, the total borrowing of the UK government, there's only 28 years ago, Julia, was £350 billion, right? Today, £2.7 trillion.
Yeah.
Now, if you see interest rates, not the official ones that the Bank of England come out, but what the public perceive, which is investors who buy our gilts, which are bits of paper, it's a loan to the government, that when you see rates have gone up, best part of 1% in 6 months, well, it doesn't take the brains of a rocket scientist, it's what it costs to actually pay extra for funding that debt.
Right,
and
so this is basically like a massive big mortgage, and the rates have gone up massively. But we're paying, certainly the last time I looked, it was like £110 billion a year just to pay the interest on effectively the mortgage on the country.
That's exactly right. And that's why we're going to have
defence,
a much
more than
bigger
education put together, and a couple of other departments too.
Yeah, and health and all these other things.
Every penny we spend servicing that debt, every penny extra we have to spend to basically pay the interest on these gilts, these loans to the government to cover our big debt, that's a penny that we're not spending on education or health service or policing
or defence or whatever it may be. Absolutely right, yeah.
Yeah, and meanwhile we're spending more and more. This is the thing, all the debate seems to be about this next budget, which is how much will taxes go up by. There doesn't seem to be any conversation within Labour about how much they need to cut spending.
Well, there's about 7 of them. The hot ones are obviously going to be inheritance tax. I think probably the betting tax. I know the betting tax, which is actually probably could cost, something like 25,000 jobs if it all goes wrong. And the one that this Torsten Bell, who's been appointed by the Chancellor, who's very left-wing, despises anything to do with growth in any way, is probably going to recommend a tax on banks. This would be, in my humble opinion, very retrograde. It's taken us 15 years to get back on the bridle.
Yeah. Bearing in mind, the people in the city, they used to pay something like 25% of all tax in this country.
Exactly.
We do not want our banking sector going. We'll have to leave it there, but absolutely fascinating to talk to you. Great to get an expert on these things on. David Buick, financial advisor, markets commentator at Aquis Exchange. Thank you for that. Quick thoughts from Philip Ingram on all of that.
Yeah, well, it's fascinating, and that bit, getting the country to understand that this gilt rate is how much the country is having to pay in the country's mortgage, and we know how much
and the country doesn't have any money; it's taxpayers' money.
We know how much it affects us if our mortgage rates go up. And in 6 months, the country's mortgage rates have gone up 1%. incompetence by the person who's responsible for making sure.
But it's also about faith in the competence of this government and the policies that they're pursuing. It's basically saying that the market's changing. And again, you can say, oh, these are just nasty people gambling. Yeah, to money markets, it is basically one big roulette wheel.
But that's what makes the world go round.
But that's the reality. We need people to want to buy, basically buy faith in our country.
And it's a measurement by those that understand economics and all the rest of it into the confidence of our politicians and their political decision making and our economic policies.
It's not party political.
No,
it's just the reality. Will they make money or won't they?
Correct.
It's just that simple, isn't it? 11:48 is the time. I'm going to take a quick break. Then we are going to be talking about whether or not the Tory party will adopt what Robert Jenrick has given away in an interview he's done, and basically not just welcoming Nigel Farage's plans for mass deportations, but also having a net emigration policy, so more people leaving the country than coming in for a whole decade if the Tories get into power. Would you support that? That's up next. This is Talk.
I mean, it is absolutely jaw-dropping, isn't it? I wouldn't have put that on X or any other social media platform, not because I think it's that outrageous. It isn't that outrageous, just because I know how pathetic everything has become now. And I would know that if I posted something like that, there'll be half a dozen people who've got nowhere near enough to do trying to get me arrested by the police. And that is exactly, of course, what's happened to him.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk, the home of common sense for me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. 11:52 is the time. Let's talk about immigration. We talked about that an awful lot in the last few weeks, have we not? Before Angie Rayner, apparently a working-class single mum and apparently can't pay tax as a result. But right now, let's return to the subject because it's been very much in the news continuously. And Robert Jenrick, the Shadow Justice Secretary, who's been speaking out on this issue quite a lot, has done an interview where he's, well, basically moved ahead of what we expect to be announced at Tory Party conference by Kemi Badenoch to talk about how we should have a decade of net emigration, not immigration, more people leaving the country than coming in, to try and basically reclaim the country to people who've already live here. Let's talk about this with public policy specialist Lucy White. A very good morning to you.
Hi, Julia. Good morning. How are you?
Very well indeed. Thanks for joining us. Well, I mean, this would be interesting. I mean, remember 2010, well, you probably don't, but I'm old enough to remember, 2010 when David Cameron said they would get net migration down to the tens of thousands. And it's basically ballooned to, I think it was 800,000 in one of the most recent years. And that meant we actually had 1.2 million people more, people arriving in the country, and there were people leaving, but we ended up with more than 800,000 more people in the country. In some areas, 1 or 2% more of the people have arrived in the local population in the last year. It's been an unprecedented increase. What do you make of Robert Jenrick suggesting we should actually not just cut immigration, but we actually have net emigration?
Yeah, I think it's perfect. I think we definitely need a decade of net emigration because we cannot cope and sustain these levels. We recently saw that Jenrick welcomed but also criticised Reform's plan of 600,000 leaving in the first term, i.e. the first 5 years. But I think we all know that we need to go much beyond that. And as you said, Julia, so in 2023, we had a gross migration levels of 1.22 million entering the country. And we know that 85% of those were from non-EU countries. And what's interesting is Jenrick actually criticised Priti Patel. He criticised her.
She's the Shadow Foreign Secretary.
Immigration. Yes, exactly. So Jenrick openly criticised Priti Patel, which I think that will bring some sparks at the Conservative Party conference.
Yeah.
Because, under Priti Patel's points-based system, she essentially removed caps on immigration and opened the floodgates.
Well, yeah, and again, the Prime Minister at the time, of course, was Boris Johnson, that Boris wave. I mean, absolutely the opposite of what every single government has been elected on since 2010 onwards. I mean, it's just, not that we were ever asked, by the way, by Tony Blair in his years about the mass immigration. And we're constantly told we are a nation of immigrants. I mean, we're literally not. I mean, we're the opposite of that. This country's had an almost entirely stable population for centuries with tiny levels of immigration. And certainly in the post-war years, we had net emigration. More people left, places to go to like America and Canada and New Zealand and Australia and others. More people left than actually arrived in this country. I think this would certainly be something that would be a lot of support for. But the key thing is, I think a lot of people feel they do want the mass deportations because they, the people who've arrived here illegally or have come here legally and then overstayed their visas, sometimes by decades, have no right to be here.
Yeah, that's absolutely true, Julia. I couldn't agree more. And I think the other issue is that not only were some people entering legally on visas, but they could bring an influx of dependents.
Yes.
And those dependents didn't even need to speak English and they didn't need to have any skills. So this is also what the huge issue was. I mean, if you look at the health and care social worker visa, there were more dependents than the actual healthcare workers themselves, which just shows you, okay, so... And all these dependents, where are the school places, the NHS support?
And then we're told they're a net economic benefit to us, when, of course, if you're paying for your kids to go to school and often still needing housing benefit because you're not earning enough, which they're entitled to after a little while, on what basis are you going to be a net benefit and a net contributor to this country? It is quite extraordinary, the lies that we've been told. And again, even if someone's working hard, that's great. But we've got, quite a few million unemployed people in this country who could be doing those jobs instead, who are already living here. Perhaps we should get them to work, but there we are. Let's also talk about the cases. I mean, look, I think everyone's been very much focused on people who've arrived on the boats, and particularly alleged criminality, in some cases, and proven criminality of people who've come to this country illegally, or even those who've come legally but then ended up staying. But an extraordinary story about a migrant called Moffat Conophilia. He's aged 48. He was living on the Bibby Stockholm barge in Dorset when he carried out a sexual assault on a 17-year-old girl. attempted to kiss her twice on the lips and distressing her. He said he'd never been so close to a white woman. He amazingly has avoided... He was found guilty following a trial. On Wednesday, he avoided prison after he begged magistrates not to send him to jail because he needed to support his wife and children. Maybe he should have thought about that before he tried to kiss a 17-year-old girl. But he also thanked the UK for looking after me. He says, the British are looking after me. Accommodation, food, I can give the whole lot. Thank you. I appreciate Great Britain for looking after me. Doesn't he appreciate it enough to not sexually assault one of the girls from Great Britain, though, did he?
Yeah, exactly. I think my two main takeaways from this particular case is that, number one, he was only given 18 months of community service and 60 hours of unpaid work, which is essentially about a week of unpaid work.
Yeah.
So firstly, the punishment is not enough. And secondly, if you actually look into this case, he's actually from, I believe, the Solomon Islands, which is a tiny, tiny island by Australia. It's located in the southwest Pacific Ocean. And it's not a war-torn country. It's actually a beautiful island where many people go for holiday. So if you look at our asylum system and the Home Office, they should review his case of the Solomon Islands and say, okay, this is not a legitimate asylum seeker. He can quite easily go back to the Solomon Islands. And given the distance of the Solomon Islands to the United Kingdom, it begs to question, how did he get here in the first place? Probably on a plane, Julia, not on a boat.
Yeah, indeed. But it's extraordinary that he claimed there's a danger for his family if he goes to prison. My wife is just a housewife. I'm an asylum seeker, but still look for money to feed them. If I go to prison, my family is going to go hungry. I'm prepared to work. I'll comply with anything. I've never committed any offence in England. Well, yeah, you've been here 3 years. You followed a 17-year-old girl to the beach and started making sexual advances to her, tempted to kiss her. Yeah, I'm sure it was the first time, mate, and you've been an absolutely, above board great citizen of this country to this point. I mean, none of it adds up, and this is just the latest story. We've had allegations. We've got some cases still going through court about people living in asylum hotels. We've got some where there have been charges have been brought. We've got some cases where there's already been proven allegations and people have been found guilty. And the British public just had enough. It's as simple as that. Thank you so much, Lucy White. I appreciate that. Philip Ingham, final quick word on this?
Well, yes, it's interesting. Solomon Islands, there's no threat there, and if he's sending money to his family, he can't work. So if he is working, he's working illegally. He's breaking the law.
I mean, again, it's just, and then the courts go, oh, poor him, and they believe this bleeding heart thing. I'm sorry,
us.
Yeah, well, I don't know if that'd be a punishment if you'd gone for a 17-year-old girl I know, but there we are. That's just me. Coming up, we're going to be talking more about, guess who? Angela Rayner. This is Talk.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Very good afternoon. Welcome back to the show. It's coming up to 3 minutes past midday. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. This is Talk. We are, of course, the home of common sense. Lots of common sense from you on the phone lines and on the texts and tweets as well today. And whether you're listening on DAB+ radio or on your smart speaker, watching on YouTube or your connected device, it is absolutely fabulous to have your company. Don't forget, I'm still waiting to hear from you what you think about Angela Rayner. Should she stay or should she go after she's admitted dodging £40,000 in tax over her £800,000 flat purchase in Hove? I want to know, should she resign? Should the Prime Minister sack her? Should we wait? Should we wait and find out what the independent standards advisor has to say? Well, she didn't want to ever wait when there was a Tory minister who was facing questions or probes like this. So why the difference now? Is she a hypocrite? Is she a chancer? Is she a tax dodger? Or is she just a working class woman who pulled herself up by the bootstraps and has been under attack by that nasty, nasty, nasty animal that is the British media, and it's all their fault and not hers? I'd love to know your thoughts on that. And since when did being a working class woman, let alone someone who'd been a single mum or the mother of a disabled child, mean that you've got to have lower standards ethically and pay less tax when you bought a home? 800 grand home? Not many people in this country can afford 800 grand for a 3-bedroom flat, which is, by the way, you know, your bolt hole at the weekend after you've been at work all weekend. By the way, your free home given to us and paid for, given to her and paid for by the rest of us, the taxpayer, as a grace and favour property at the Admiralty in Whitehall. So, love to hear your thoughts on all of this. Give us a call, 0344 499 1000. You can text 87222. Get in touch with us at talkTV on X, and calls are charged at the national rate. Text cost £1 standard network rate message. In a couple of moments, we are going to be talking to Reform UK's Alex Wilson. He's a London Assembly member, to find out his thoughts on this and much more besides. But let me introduce you once again to my regular guest on a Thursday. You'll know him well, former senior military intelligence officer Philip Ingram. More afternoon
Good
to you.
afternoon. Yes,
We've moved into the afternoon.
now.
Got lots more to talk about in this hour, but Angela Rayner's no doubt dominating all the news. Although I have to say, an awful lot of the TV stations seem to think, and the BBC, it's much more important to talk about this funicular crash in Lisbon. I've been to Lisbon, wonderful city, one of my favourite cities in Europe. I've not been on the funicular, but you can see it all over the city. But absolute tragedy, 17 people dead. But they're very much focusing on that, I think, rather conveniently, in a way that I probably wouldn't be if it was a Tory Deputy Prime Minister who was facing similar problems as Angela Rayner. We've also had a revelation in the last half hour or so that the property where her £800,000 3-bedroom flat in Hove near Brighton is this big white stucco building, seafront, has been vandalised, graffiti called her a tax evader and the B word, scrawled in paint. Totally, I mean, it's just disgusting behaviour.
That's unacceptable
criminal behaviour.
Yeah.
I hope they get caught and they get banged to rights. But, I mean, again, this is going to evince more sympathy for Angela Rayner. Should we be sympathetic to her?
No, not in the slightest. Yeah, she's the housing minister, so housing policy, and that includes tax policy for housing, is something that is on
the doubling of stamp duty for people buying a second home. That policy
is on her brief. She is a senior government minister. She's a deputy prime minister. She talks to the chancellor and chancellor's department on a daily basis, or a very regular basis. She's got access to free legal advice. She's got a grace and favour apartment that she doesn't pay benefits in kind for, because ministers get a separate rule to everyone else who's employed.
You're not
elsewhere.
sounding very sympathetic, if you don't mind me saying. She's a working class woman. That's a get-out clause, isn't it?
She's attacked everyone else for tax issues, and her boss Keir Starmer has in the past called previous prime ministers out for not making decisions very quickly to sack people who break the rules. She's a hypocrite.
OK, he's sitting on the fence, so you can definitely tell. I reckon Keir Starmer's sitting on the fence. He's coming out in public defending her. I bet behind the scenes things are very, very, very...
He just doesn't know what fence he's sitting on.
Well, no, indeed. Well, again, phase 2, it's all going very well so far. The Chancellor Rachel Reeves has done some interviews today. She says that she has full confidence in the Deputy Prime Minister. Yeah, I mean, no one even has full confidence in you, sweetheart, so I'm not sure that works. But she says that Angela Rayner was just trying to do the right thing. Well, was she? I mean, that's kind of what we're waiting to find out. Well, Well, let's talk about this. And I do want to hear your calls, 0344 499 1000 on this issue. Let's talk about this with Reform UK's London Assembly member, Alex Wilson, who joins us right now. Very good afternoon to you, Alex.
Good afternoon, Julia.
Afternoon. Lots to talk about with you. Where do you stand? Should Angela Rayner stay or should she go?
I think she's got to go. I mean, the more details come out about this story and the details of it, the murkier it gets, and the more that it seems things have been tried to be hidden, and the more comes out, it doesn't put her in a very positive light at all, especially given that her remit as Secretary of State for Housing and Local Government, ownership of property is a big part of that brief. And
do you think? And indeed, her department brought in this doubling of council tax. I keep saying council doubling. There's also an increase for council tax for second home buyers, second home owners, but for second home buyers, this increase in stamp duty. So basically, you pay. I mean, on a property of her size, you pay 10% instead of 5% on most of the value of that property. You'd think that. I mean, she claims she did seek legal advice on this. Do you think she asked the right person? Because we're told this morning, sources are saying she spoke to 3 different people. We don't know if that was, a cleaner, woman at the bus stop and a bloke down the pub, or if it was 3 legal and tax specialists. Can you hear me? Alex, can you hear me? Alex, hello.
And we don't know if they gave her the same advice and which one she picked and chose to go with.
Yeah, indeed. Sorry, we lost you. We lost you for a second there, Alex. But this is the thing. So she sought this advice from a KC, we understand, a top tax specialist who said, you didn't pay the right tax. HMRC will still very likely fine her. I didn't know governor isn't actually an excuse with the tax man. But does that mean that she's done something so wrong that she should be forced from office?
Well, earlier in the week, the line seemed to be that she hadn't done anything wrong. Then there was an admission that she had, and then the details of how part of this had been funded through the sale of the share in her previous property to the trust that's there to look after the interests of her child. Look, a lot of people have complicated lives and complicated tax arrangements as a result of that. But that is not an excuse for not making sure you're doing the right thing, particularly if you are in a position of power, of authority that's directly relevant to housing as an issue. So you've got to be wiser than wise, and especially when you have spent so much of your career, her career, going after other people who've been doing similar things. The vitriol that she threw at the likes of Nadhim Zahawi when he had question marks over his tax arrangements, the Labour position in opposition, the default response to any kind of whiff of scandal was resign, resign, resign. And if you are going to play that game in opposition, you have to play by the same rules when you yourself are in government. So I think the big thing, and the thing why so many people are angry, and listen to various Vox Pops and people calling in on this channel and on others, hypocrisy. That's what gets you. If you want to be preaching and taking the moral high ground, you've absolutely got to play by that rules yourself.
And this is the thing I think for a lot of people, and certainly that's the biggest issue for me, is the hypocrisy over this. And again, you would think either if you're going to really gun for people like Nadhim Zahawi and others, and Rishi Sunak's wife being a non-dom, and I absolutely gun for both of them on their tax arrangements, that they were both outrageous, that if you're going to gun for those people, you need to make sure that you are whiter than white yourself, so you can't face the same criticism. But also, crucially, wouldn't you want to, if you're someone who says you're all about, helping the working class and saying how important it is that everyone pays their fair share of tax, wouldn't you want to make sure you've absolutely paid your fair share of tax?
Yeah, completely. I mean, this is a government that is raising the overall levels of tax, the burden on our economy to the highest level it's ever been, or certainly since the war. And it's just not acceptable for, if you believe that people should be paying more tax and you want to hamper the economy by doing that, then of course you yourself have got to make your own fair contribution. Yeah. And that's, again, the hypocrisy. Yes, there's 2 levels of hypocrisy here. One in her personal affairs and the way that she's held others to account in her earlier in her career. But secondly, this government is a tax-raising government. It wants to spend money on all sorts of things that we really can't afford. But you've got to make your own contribution to that if that's the policy you're driving.
What about, just finally on this issue, what do you make of the people who the Prime Minister mentioned in PMQs, he was standing by, he was proud to have her as his deputy. I mean, I don't think he's always thought that. He's tried to get rid of her a few times and get rid of her responsibilities. But I think he was proud, and she's a working class woman. Lots of her allies, people speaking up for her, saying, even a union boss, Paul Novak, has said, she's under attack because she's a working class woman. This is sexism, this is classism, and that's why they've gunned for her. What do you say to that?
No, she's under attack because she's a hypocrite, pure and simple. And for the likes of Starmer and Rachel Reeves to come out to say that they've got full confidence in her, well, it sounds very much like me to how you have in football when a manager's about to get the chop, the chairman comes out and says, the manager's got the full confidence of the board, and then by the end of the week they're gone. So I suspect she won't last. Certainly, if there's any sense of fair play and justice, she won't last.
Well, that's an interesting proviso, but there we are. Let me talk to you just very briefly about Robert Jenrick. He's Shadow Justice Secretary. He was a leadership rival for Kemi Badenoch last year for the Tory leadership. He has done an interview in which he said he very much supports tough migration crackdown. He supports the deportations that Nigel Farage has talked about, but he also said he would support laws designed to ensure more people leave the UK than enter, so having a net emigration rather than immigration policy. How much do you welcome Robert Jenrick's support for reform, and is this basically a prelude to him, I don't know, jumping ship?
I'd be very surprised if he did jump ship. I would welcome him, to be honest. I think he does have a lot of good things to say, particularly since being turfed out of government. But it does also feel a bit kind of Johnny-come-lately. Nigel's been talking about these issues for a great many years. Was the first to go out and film the small boats coming across the channel 2 or 3 years ago when nobody else was talking about it.
True.
I think the Conservative Party have got themselves in a terrible state by their record in office. If Robert Jenrick is prepared to completely renounce or denounce his own party's record in office, then of course that's to be welcomed. But fundamentally, I think he's saying this because he, like all the Conservatives, are scared. They're scared of reform. We're gathering for our conference tomorrow and Saturday. We're going to showcase what we're all about. And quite frankly, if people want to leave the Tories and join us, that's fine, but they need to hurry up. They need to do it. They need to have something positive to bring to the table and not just doing it to save their own skins.
Very interesting. Well, Nigel Farage is putting it back from Washington, where he's been speaking to a committee there, the House Judiciary Committee, about regulation of online expression. And he's been telling them about how in Britain and in Europe, how in an evidence session, how much that has been infringed, but also talking about Lucy Connolly, of course, imprisoned for a tweet she wrote in about the post the Southport attack, but also about the arrest only this week of the Irish comedy writer Graham Linehan. He was arrested by 5 armed police officers at Heathrow over 3 tweets he'd written about trans activists. How concerned are you at reform about free speech in this country? Do you think that we have a long and proud history and still have free speech in this country, as Keir Starmer keeps insisting to us? And what are you going to do about it?
No, we do have a long and proud history of supporting free speech as a country, and it's something that we should be very, very proud of. But it is absolutely under threat, and the Online Safety Act is part of that. But we look at the way that cancel culture, something which has largely been imported from the States, certain views, robust views on things like trans and religions and things like that, get criticised, get cancelled, and it's simply not acceptable. I think what Nigel has done has really made a lot of noise about this, put it front and centre of people's minds over the last couple of days. And I think it's absolutely right to do so, because nobody else is really standing up for the right of people to say things that sometimes, they might be unsavoury, they might be unhelpful, they might be wrong. But if we have a culture in which we encourage free expression and debate of views, if that's how we should run our system, it shouldn't be putting in frameworks and legislation to clamp down on people's ability to say what they think. And as far as sending 5 armed police officers to arrest someone as they're arriving at an airport, we're in London. We have a knife crime epidemic. We have the
sorry, the phone line went a bit funny. We have it. Sorry, you were saying in London we have a knife crime epidemic, which we absolutely
we have knife crime epidemic. We have mobile phone theft epidemic. Those are the things that the police should be dealing with, not a few hurty words on Twitter.
What do you make of the police? The chief for Metropolitan Police, that's Sir Mark Rowley. He says, look, the police are in an impossible position. They're between a rock and a hard place, and it's politicians who need to change the law. Are they in an impossible position on this? Don't they get to choose? I mean, you get to hold to account in the London Assembly the Police and Crime Commissioner, also the London Mayor, Sir Sadiq Khan, on these sort of issues. Don't they get to choose their priorities?
Well, clearly, I think the law and changing the law is the reserve of politicians, and we all need to look at how we do that. But not every crime gets investigated. Not every crime gets results in an arrest. Or I mean, look, burglary. Only 2% of burglaries in outer London ultimately result in a charge or a court summons. So clearly there is prioritisation goes on in the Met. They have limited resources. My argument is they should be prioritising those resources on crimes where there are genuine victims, whether those are crimes of violence or crimes of theft, robbery, burglary. Those are the things we need to be tackling, not saying a few words on.
Great. Alex Wilson, the line just about survived. Alex Wilson, who's a Reform UK London Assembly member. Thank you very much for joining us. Apologies, everyone, for the quality of that line, but I wanted to hear what you had to say. Interesting, Philip Ingram, it's interesting calling Robert Jenrick and Johnny Come Lately. I thought it was interesting.
Well, it is, but I think as Reform starts to grow in the polls, we're going to see a lot of Tory ex-ministers and ex-MPs who can see themselves as a career in politics in the future, jumping ship into Reform. And actually, Reform need people with experience in government. If Reform is going to,
I think there needs to be a sort of a point at which, no, you can't just hang around and wait. You either agree with what they're doing or you don't agree with what they're doing. I think also voters will take a very dim view of that. Just say breaking news regarding Angela Rayner. Sir Keir Starmer has condemned, he says, in the strongest possible terms. I condemn in the strongest possible terms the vandalism at Angela Rayner's seaside flat in Hove. Downing Street said, whatever scrutiny our parliamentarians may face, it is appalling that their private homes should be targeted in this way. 100% agree with the Prime Minister on that. I'm sure you do. This is a criminal act of vandalism. Very intimidating as well. People don't go anywhere near people's homes. If you want to protest, hold up that banner outside, Downing Street or outside Parliament. You don't intimidate, don't send abuse. You can tweet her and say, I think you're entitled to do that in the public domain. But don't go to people's homes. Do not go anywhere near people's homes. Don't commit criminal vandalism.
But again, I think some of the language that she has used in the past,
scum,
she's bringing this on herself. And everyone talks about Zahari and the tax issues there and are criticising that.
Nadeem Zahari.
Yeah, they forget about the criticism that she gave out in, I think it was in April 2018 on Jeremy Hunt. For avoiding £100,000 worth of stamp duty tax by buying multiple apartments in one go, and she was very critical of that and calling for his. She's in the same bracket.
Exactly. And again, I don't have a problem with her buying property and I've got no issue with any of this. And I mean, when everyone's talking about this property empire, I'm on air going, she's not got a property empire, she bought a home. I just don't understand why, if you're a mother of teenagers, if she's brought it up in Manchester and you work you've got a constituency in Manchester you should spend some time in, and you've got a Ashton-under-Lyme, you've got a job in London as Deputy Prime Minister. I'm not entirely sure when you've got the time to be, I don't know, in a canoe vaping.
That's her personal
decision. It's entirely her personal decision. But I, as a mum, I don't know. I've got some question marks. But anyway, 12:19 is the time. Up next, we're going to get your thoughts on a lot of the big stories, in particular, who are we kidding? Angela Rayner. Should she stay or should she go? We had a guest on earlier who said this is all just a horrible attack on her. She's done nothing wrong. And we also had a caller who seems to think that she shouldn't have to go. But let's face it, most of you are agreeing with me and with Philip, and I think probably the majority of people in the country say her position is now untenable. But how long will she last? I'd love to hear from you. 0344 499 1000. This is Talk.
mean, it is absolutely jaw-dropping, isn't it? I wouldn't have put that on X or any other social media platform, not because I think it's that outrageous. It isn't that outrageous.
Here for Runcorn, I have two people that this happened to over ill-advised tweets, but nothing terrible. Who, again, one of them has lost his partner, his girlfriend, lost his job, you know, and it goes on and on. The impact on people's lives of this ridiculous policing of our speech, it has now got to the point where, you know, it's actually quite frightening. Reform's policy, of course, is to repeal this ridiculous Online Safety Act.
I mean, it is absolutely jaw-dropping, isn't it? I wouldn't have put that on X or any other social media platform, not because I think it's that outrageous. It isn't that outrageous, just because I know how pathetic everything has become now, and I would know that if I post
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk, the Home of Common Sense. 12:23 is the time. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. Philip Ingram's still with me. And you guys are on the phones and on the texts and on the tweets asking you today, should Angela Rayner resign as Deputy Prime Minister? Tell us why she should stay, why she should go. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. Lots of texts and tweets coming in as well. Ben says, of course she should resign. She's the Deputy Prime Minister and she's dodged tens of thousands of pounds in tax while repeatedly saying one rule for them, another for us. If not, it's definitely one rule for them and another for us. Roy says, it is certainly a comeuppance for the extremely complex and bureaucratic system of rules politicians in collusion with civil service have created. When even the housing minister and her tax advisors don't know what tax she should be paying, something is seriously wrong. It's a very fair point. Although, as Philip Ingram has pointed out, Roy, there is actually a hotline to call about stamp duty at HMRC itself. It's open from 9 till 5, Monday to Friday. She could maybe have given it a call, or I don't know, just popped round to their offices one day at work. The question should be, says Dell, why aren't the police investigating her for fraud? I don't think she's reported herself to HMRC. I don't think it does count as fraud in those circumstances. Tim says, if we investigated all MPs for dodgy dealings and they resign, we may not have many left, which is not necessarily a bad thing. And John says, most politicians seem to be the same and play the same game, while most people look on and shake their heads. A politician gets caught with their hands in the cookie jar and the rest act outraged, condemning them and saying they should resign until they are caught. It's all theatre. Now, this is the thing that I really don't like, the idea that everyone is at it, everyone is, you know, of themselves. That's the thing I don't like, and that's why it's very important that we do hold everyone to account where we can. What we shouldn't do, absolutely, is criticise journalists for asking reasonable questions, especially when it turns out they were right to ask those questions, as is the case here. Let's talk to Scott, who's on the line. He's in Oxford. Good afternoon to you, Scott.
Hello there.
Hello. What do you want to say about this? Should she go or should she stay?
She should go. She should really do the honourable thing and resign. But if she doesn't want to, then she should be forced out of, especially the position she's in. About 5 years ago, I did some inheritance planning because I was coming up to retirement age, and we set up a trust for a disabled grandchild and put a property in the name of that grandchild. Part of it was to give them some future benefit when we're no longer around and they've got something to fall back on.
Was that the property you put in? Was that a property you or another family member was living in?
No. Well, we owned it, but we weren't living in it. But we actually rent it out. So that now is in trust to them, and they get the benefits of rental received and things like that.
Yeah.
Now there are very strict rules with that. There's very strict rules about how the money is used, about what money you can take out. Now, I'm not saying she's done anything wrong legally, but taking out £160,000 out of the trust of her son really benefits her. It's not benefiting.
Well, I'm trying to be charitable here, thinking that was, 50% of the house was put into trust. She took out her 25%. Presumably the ex-husband's got 25%, and she took out her equity so she could buy something. But the thing is, here's the question:
she's still on the freehold, though, isn't she?
She's still on the deeds. Yeah.
She's still on the deeds.
Yeah,
well,
that's what's complicated it. But here's the thing: when you did this, and it was inheritance tax planning. The idea is that you're not paying 40% to the tax man for this property; it goes straight to your disabled grandchild. Now, totally legal, totally allowed, very sensible planning. But it's legally avoiding tax would otherwise be due if you didn't plan. Is she doing that as well? But is it acceptable for her to do that, even if it's for a good cause for a disabled child?
No, I don't think it is. And I
but it's okay for you to do it.
I think there's lots of things here that is it tax avoidance? I would say what I've done is tax planning on advice, and we've also taken out policies that also cover for inheritance tax in the future.
Yeah.
So we've got money put aside to pay for inheritance tax
to cover it. Okay.
To cover it.
You're very organised.
Well, it's just that's what we were advised, and we could afford to do it. I'd say we're in, like many people now, we're more asset rich as opposed to cash rich. Yeah. But it's sensible to do forward planning. There's nothing wrong with that. But I think what's happened here is that there's several things. There's issues of trust. One of the other things is she's bought this property, as you say, down in the south of England, miles and miles away from the family she says she's
miles away from her family and her job.
And her job, exactly. So the other thing is as well, I was thinking, I paid a lot of money to get good, sound financial advice. Okay? Now, I take it she did the same. And if she's saying that the advice she's been given was wrong, inaccurate, it's most of the advice you get is based on the information you give.
Well, we understand that. I mean, there's certainly statements about the company that advised her on the trust arrangement was not the lawyer that advised her on this particular issue of how much stamp duty should I pay.
No, well, I understand that because we had the same. We use a different conveyancing lawyer for property than we do for our will and the trust. Yeah. But they're all fairly linked. I mean, it's not difficult to get all those. I can't see her arrangements are that more complicated than mine were. Yeah. And I managed.
Yeah, and you're not the housing secretary. Scott, that's such an interesting perspective from someone who's actually been there and done that. I mean, that's the thing. The whole sort of like working class woman, all the stuff about her buying her council house. I mean, she's actually a highly paid, six-figure earning, professional now. And I mean, she's not a victim.
No, I do take umbrage when we get this thing of when something goes wrong, we bring out she's a female, we bring out that she's working class, we bring out she's got a disabled child.
Well, we don't bring it out, she does.
Yeah, but it's all irrelevant to the actual conversation of whether it's right or wrong. So in my case, I think she should do the honourable thing and resign. If she doesn't want to do that, then I think she will end up having to be sacked from that particular job. Yeah,
very interesting. Scott, so appreciate your call. Thank you. Really interesting to have that perspective, Philip Ingham, from somebody who done some of the same stuff. Again, it's all legal and above board, but he found it quite easy to get the legal advice that he needed. The
complete application of common sense from Scott and explaining very, very clearly exactly how. Yes, it's complex, but how, if you go through it in a steady, clear way and get the right sort of advice.
But I still think, although it's tax planning and it's tax planning for a disabled child, but there's also another child who's not disabled, who's benefited from this. The reality is, it is a way of avoiding inheritance tax.
But again,
you can say for good cause, but most people think that. I still think that a Tory politician doing this, and it was found out, even in the same circumstances, I think Angela Rayner, forget the stamp duty. I think the trust alone, I think she would also be calling for them to go.
But also combine that with the fact that she has avoided capital gains tax on 2 properties that she bought from council housing stock and others, because one was her primary residence, which she wasn't living in with her husband and children, and that was a separate one that she attended occasionally. Every stage, the whole way through her career, there has been this issue with regard to tax avoidance.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's go to another call quickly. Elliot is in Bushy. Good afternoon, Elliot. What do you want to say?
Oh, thanks for taking my call.
Oh, thank you for calling.
Three very important things. Bear with me. First of all, this could all be resolved very quickly. She should go Absolutely. But what she should do, and I'm not sure if this has been mentioned on your programme because I've only been able to tune in now, she should let the public and Parliament and whoever is needed to see the advice in writing that she was given by this supposed
she's going to give that. She's presumably going to give that to the Standards Advisor, and then we'll see the relevant bits. But I don't think she should have to divulge every personal detail of her finances.
What I was simply saying is, in order to clear it up, she should show this advice.
Yep.
She can take off the name of the individual so there's no breach of confidentiality. Yep. However, my second point is I simply don't believe her. Look, you're talking about a senior member of this government, a representative of this institutional Great Britain, this once great country of ours, whom could be the next Prime Minister if Starmer continues with the nonsense he's doing.
Well, that's why she ain't going.
And I don't believe at that level she cannot get the right information.
That's the argument, isn't it? No one believes that. Elliot, I'm going to have to let you go. Thank you so much for tuning in. Say, if you've missed anything of the show, you can always go to our YouTube page, the Julia Hartley-Brewer Show. Any chance to plug it and hit subscribe. You never have to miss a thing. Thank you very much indeed for that. If you want to actually listen to Richard Power Saeed, a Labour former official who hilariously defended Angela Rayner's right to stay in the job, that's definitely worth a listen. Right now, we're going to take a quick break. Up next, going to talk about Lush. Ooh, I can smell those bath bombs right now. Shutting up shop, unfortunately, only for one day, not 365 days a year, in solidarity with Gaza. This, as it looks likely, Britain is going to next month recognise a Palestinian state. Who knows where and who's running it, but go recognise it, even while Hamas still holds hostages. They are starving and beating and torturing underground. Really? Is that what a moral democracy does? We'll talk about that up next with a Jewish journalist, Nicole Lampert. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Very good afternoon. Welcome back to the show. 12:36 is the time. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. Philip Ingram still with me, and let's talk about where we are with Gaza, Israel. Oh, and the Palestinian state that we're about to recognise next month, even though we don't really know where it is or who'd be in charge. Let's talk about all of that now with journalist Nicole Lampert, who joins us. A very good afternoon to you, Nicole.
Hi, Julia. Thanks for having me today.
Can we talk first of all about the most important thing that happened yesterday? And of course, it's absolutely is most important thing when it comes to world affairs. The cosmetics and sort of toiletry shop Lush, loved by vegans and the right on everywhere, and people who like disgustingly smelling bath bombs, decided to close up their shops for a whole 24 hours. Sadly, not for 365 days, as I would wish, in solidarity with Gaza. What purpose was that serving? Do you know?
I think that was serving Lush's purpose, because there's no other reason for it, really. As with so many other places or people or groups that take on the Palestine mantra and try and make themselves out as the kind of victims of free speech and all of that. It's all about getting attention for themselves. Lush is a company that's in trouble financially. They talked about how they were giving up £300,000 worth of takings, but actually they are in the red. If they really wanted to help the Palestinian people, they could have just given them a load of money, but of course they didn't do that. They've grabbed the attention.
We shouldn't even be talking about it, should we?
Exactly.
there's always that. That's the thing. But I mean, genuinely, I genuinely cross the road when I see a Lush ahead. The smell. Even talking about the bath bombs, I can smell that store as I walk by. So I mean, if they wanted to close up every single day, that would be fantastic. I'm not quite sure how it helps the people of Gaza, but we get a lot of this. We've got this to get the celebrities. We've had Hugh Bollington, haven't we? Making. I want to talk about the people of Gaza. What's happening in Gaza is absolutely. I mean, these people just pontificate. I doubt these people could tell you 5 basic facts that are verifiable facts about this conflict. But they all see.
It is. Where's Palestine? Where's Israel? Show it on a map.
Well, maybe we should ask our Prime Minister and our Foreign Secretary, because next month, as we know from what the Prime Minister had to say a month or so ago, Britain is going to follow suit with all these other do-goody countries and leaders in recognising a Palestinian state at the UN General Assembly, unless, and there were 4 conditions for Israel, none of these, by the way, being conditions that any other country would accept, but no conditions whatsoever on Hamas. So Hamas can, and we know there are no talks on the table right now, Hamas cannot release a single one of the hostages we hope and believe could still be alive, some 20 of the 50 that they still hold. They could carry on torturing and starving those people to their heart's content in those tunnels underground. And Britain would reward them for that, as they did for October the 7th, by recognising a Palestinian state. What do you make of that?
Yeah, well, yesterday, 8 hostage families met with David Lammy, and they kind of asked him outright, so are you saying that you're going to recognise a Palestine state even as they are holding hostages? And he had to say yes, even though he's also told them we're not rewarding Hamas for the state. But that's exactly what they are doing, and it's absolutely ridiculous that a ceasefire requires 2 people, two parties, but it's only making demands of 1. So,
even Qatar, which quite happily sponsors terrorism and quite happily allows Hamas's leaders, the ones who don't want to live in tunnels underground and who happily just live, as billionaires in luxury apartments in Qatar. Even Qatar actually walked away from the last set of talks because the Hamas's demands were so unreasonable.
Yeah. And one of the great ironies of this is that this UN conference is being co-sponsored by Saudi Arabia that doesn't recognise Israel, which has been in existence for 80 years. So, where the power imbalance is absolutely crazy. And you do wonder what is going on with our politicians, where they would come up with this kind of cat-handed demand of Israel, which it cannot possibly fulfill on its own. There are ceasefire talks continuing, but once Britain and France and Canada came out with these demands of Israel, then Hamas walked away from the last ceasefire talks. It doesn't reward them, does it?
And the Hamas leadership actually, thanked Britain and said they used the word justified what they'd done on October 7th. This is quite literally being seen by them as a reward for this. But quite also, the reason why people are so anxious, lots of support for Israel, not from some people dancing in the street in London and other major cities around the world and many parts of the Middle East, and certainly in Gaza itself over the Hamas attacks. But there was an outpouring of support for Israel having to face this horrific, when the details of this massacre on October 7th came out. But now it's all about the Palestinian people apparently being starved, living under genocide, being killed on an unprecedented scale. By the way, all three things complete and utterly made up Hamas propaganda. But the concern about the civilians is trumps everything else at all times. But the reason why the civilians are those who are dying, is because of Hamas's own policies, Hamas's own decision to quite deliberately force as many civilians into harm's way as possible to protect themselves, not allowing them into their network of tunnels. They could have kept everybody safe if they wanted to, deliberately putting them in harm's way as human shields, hoping that more of them die, celebrating children dying whenever they can. And so we're basically saying to terrorist groups around the world, commit a horrific attack, and when you get the reasonable response from the country you've attacked, make sure as many of your own civilians die, and then you'll get what you want. We literally give them everything.
And take hostages. And you'll keep on winning. And this is the ridiculous thing. There are no demands made of Hamas. It's like they don't exist in this entire war.
Well, they're not mentioned at all when people talk about Israel has launched this many weapons. I was amazed to discover, and this is an absolute verifiable fact, fewer civilians have died in Gaza, according to Hamas's own figures, the health ministry, own figures that everyone accepts on the BBC and Sky and everyone. Fewer civilians have died in Gaza than of any people at all, than bombs have been dropped. This does, by Israel, this does not suggest, or missiles of any sort, does not suggest we are talking about indiscriminate slaughter of civilians. And we know 20,000 plus of the deaths we're told civilian are actually Hamas fighters. But yet I've yet to see, and Philip Ingram, I'm going to get to him on this in a moment, but Philip Ingram has pointed out, yet to see a single picture, a single video of any Hamas fighter being taken into one of the Gaza hospitals for treatment.
Yeah, well, there's a whole other thing, isn't there, about journalism there and all the kind of activism that comes out of it, and how our institutions are completely taken over by this idea of genocide, even though none of the courts, it doesn't fulfill any of the criteria of genocide, which is intent to kill as many other particular groups. Israel is doing everything it can to try and avoid killing a civilian.
Yeah, I mean, more so than our government did with tackling ISIS or fighting in Iraq or Afghanistan, or the Americans did, way beyond. I mean, the ratio of combatant and non-combatant deaths is beyond anything in terms of, like, the protection of civilians. And, of course, there will be some bad soldiers who do bad things and some mistakes made. Absolutely. But that is war. War is very messy and ugly. It's why we try and avoid it. It's why we don't, for instance, invade and massacre people and take hostages. But the interesting thing, the claims about genocide keep going. I've got friends who, I mean, I've had to really, I'm not prepared to fall out with people over these. I want politics to, be something you don't involve in this, but people who barely pay any attention to the news but will absolutely heart-rendingly tell me about the genocide in Gaza. Absolutely fascinatingly, the International Association of Genocide Scholars has decided to say absolutely there is a genocide in Gaza, and everyone's saying, well, if the International Association of Genocide Scholars says this, then it must be true. It turns out, although they call themselves a body of experts, you can join, and some people have now joined to make this point. You pay a fee, I think it's about $125, and then you fill out a form, and then you are a member of the society. I mean, Mickey Mouse could join this. Saddam Hussein could join this. Vladimir Putin, Xi Jinping, dead Yahya Sinwar of Hamas could join this, and he would be one of this International Association of Genocide Scholars telling us that Israel's committing genocide in Gaza.
And what we're finding is that there are all these different ways of these activist groups are getting in. So that's one of these ways. And of course, that garnered international headlines. And then it turned out that that this organisation of genuine genocide scholars had obviously had some sort of activist takeover, where you suddenly had a lot of people, genocide scholars in Iraq, who were voting, and normal scholars weren't allowed to vote. Yeah. And you've got this even with Wikipedia. So if you look at the definition of Zionism, you'll see it's not what Zionism is, and you'll see that, like, there's an information warfare going on.
And Israel is very much losing that, and that is a big issue. Well, I'm very present. I'm off to Israel on Saturday for the very first time, so I won't be here next week, and I'm going to be going to places like the Nova Festival, meeting hostages' families in Hostage Square, and I really want to sort of get my feet on the ground and see what's really going on, talking to some senior officials and the like as well, because I'm old-fashioned, quite like to know what I'm talking about, which is a lot more than an awful lot of journalists talking about this issue. Nicole Lampert, pleasure to have you on the show. Thank you very much. Hope you'll come back again. Philip Ingram, I mean, let's talk about Lush. No, let's not. This recognition that we are going to give, along with Canada and France and everyone else, all these other leaders doing that, just this nonsense of recognising a Palestinian state. Where is the Palestinian state? Who's going to be in charge of the Palestinian state? And will it involve, they say not Hamas, but isn't this just a reward for Hamas?
A complete reward for Hamas, and it is recognising that Hamas have won, as Nicole said, the information war, the information domain, and people forget how important that is. Israel has lost the information war. Israel has been taking a lot of care in what it's doing to reduce the number of civilian casualties in a very complex military environment to actually do that. And the ratios of fighters to civilians that have been killed, as you quoted Hamas's own statistics.
Such as we can know in the heat of war.
Well, exactly, but it is so much better than anything that we or the Americans or anyone else has ever done.
Something like 1.3 to 1.5. It sounds complicated. To one.
Civilians to one.
Civilians to one. That is, I mean, ours would be, the region of
3 to 5.
8.
3 to 5. And we work on a principle of zero collateral damage. The Israelis are slightly more acceptable of collateral damage that's in there, but because of the density of the population.
But by the way, people are really concerned. You know what normally happens? You know what happened in Ukraine, and women and children fled the country. They and another country. I mean, Poland's got a huge number of people. Britain still has people. Why aren't people calling on other Arab states? I don't know. Egypt has got a border. Their response was to people being bombed was to build
bigger fences.
Build bigger fences. I mean, so it is, whilst claiming there's a genocide.
Of course.
And signing up to that document. It is quite extraordinary, the nonsense. But the worst thing for me is the politicians playing along with the nonsense, and my colleagues, my journalist colleagues in other organisations who are basically Hamas propagandists. They should be absolutely ashamed of themselves. I am so appalled. And this idea, we'll get all these journalists into Gaza, we'll see what's really going on. You know what? I don't have any trust in any of these people
Everything that comes out of Gaza, whether it's coming out under a UN auspices, an ICRC auspices or anything else, it's Hamas and it's fed. And if they don't repeat that out, then their local workers will get murdered.
And we know that because that's what happens. Indeed. 12:48 is the time. I'm going to take a quick break. Do keep all your calls and your messages coming in about Orange and tax difficulties. But up next, we're going to be talking about something that, I know it's not the most important thing, but it doesn't half hurt me. It's riders on rental e-bikes and e-scooters who are the most likely to run red lights. I know, I'm as surprised as you are. That's up next. This is Talk.
government, it's been one scandal after another.
Yeah.
You know, accepting freebies. You know, matters of private jets. Well, she should have resigned already.
Yeah.
She should have resigned already.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk the Home of Common Sense with me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. 12:53 is the time. Philip Ingram's still with me as well, and we've been talking an awful lot about Angela Rayner. We've just talked about Gaza, talked about some subjects, but we know it's an awful lot about what happens on our streets, in our neighbourhoods, that can really irk us. You know me, I could do a whole show on bins every single day, could I not? We've talked an awful lot about shoplifting and about just basic antisocial behaviour that we see every single day in our neighbourhoods. And I think one of the worst bits of antisocial behaviour we often get is people riding their bikes, particularly their e-bikes, their e-scooters, on the pavement, often just dumping them. Oh, I just think I've finished riding now. I'm just going to dump it on the pavement, in the middle of the pavement. Sod anyone with a wheelchair or who's blind or anyone just trying to walk young children, or indeed anyone else passing by. But we also see them routinely. They're riding the wrong way down the one-way streets, not just on the pavement, but also running red lights. Well, it won't surprise you now that a new study has found out, after observing more than 7,500 cyclists, 11,000 pedestrians and 26,000 cars at 80 busy junctions in London, Manchester and Glasgow, recording how they behave, they've discovered that red lights are routinely ignored by a fifth of e-bike riders, e-scooter riders and cyclists. And guess what? This does put lives at risk. Well, let's talk about this with Ollie Chadwick. He's a managing director at Naught Technology, manufacturing as well as retailing e-scooters. A very good afternoon to you, Ollie.
Good afternoon, Julia.
Thank you so much for joining us. Well, I mean, I don't think this is going to come as such a surprise. So actually, the only thing that does surprise me here, I can't believe it's just a fifth of e-bike riders and e-scooter riders and cyclists. I would say it's definitely more than half round my way. That I'm very, to the extent that if there's a traffic light and a cyclist stops, I have sometimes gone, oh, thank you for stopping. What a surprise. I mean, it is a problem, isn't it?
It's obviously a problem, hence the study states that, but it's worth noting there's 1.3 million cycling journeys in London a day. There's a huge swathe of people using them, but stricter punishments do need to be put in place for those who jump red lights and make similar traffic offences. The small
well, how can they be? How can they be? No one knows who's on the bike. A lot of them covered their faces. There aren't any police enforcing any of this stuff. And if they are, well, I've seen it around my way, once every 2 years, they all turn up in their uniforms to try and catch these people. Funnily enough, they don't run a red light when there's someone in a high-vis jacket trying to catch them. I mean...
Well, as we all know, our police are stretched up. They probably don't want to be dealing with things. There are more important things to be dealing with, but it does need to be dealt with. Well, yes, tweets these days. Yeah, you end up in prison for that. But yes, no, they do need to deal with it. I think the problem is the best way to deal with it is with the threat of a serious punishment. We all know now if you drive on a mobile phone or under the influence, the penalty is pretty severe and serious and can have knock-on effects.
But the thing is, A, you have to be caught, and B, people get caught for speeding. We have all the cameras and the like. But the key thing is, you could catch people. You can catch a car that goes through a red light because you are liable. If your car is registered to you, unless you've got proof that someone else was driving, you're the one who's going to get the points and the licence. But with a cyclist, there's no idea. No, we don't know who owns that bike. We don't know who's in charge of that bike, who's riding the bike at the time. Unless we have licence plates on all bikes at all times and clearly identify people who own them, we're not going to be able to punish anybody.
So it's not at the minute no in the UK, but obviously with the rental scooters, they've got plates on them, so they can track and work out who's using it at the time. But in Germany, for example, with the scooters, they do require a licence plate. Part of that, you get third-party liability insurance. Now, is it the route we want to go down? Well, I think the reality is it might have to go down that because that way it makes it clear-cut. People are accountable. with the introduction of AI and technologies, cameras can be used that will pick up people who go through those red lights and are punished accordingly. But if equally the punishment is quite severe, it will deter people from doing it in the first place, because at the minute, small £50 fine, it's not really affecting anybody.
The main thing that doesn't deter people from committing crime is the chance of getting caught. And I just don't know of any case. Even when I've seen two police standing there and a bike has gone through a red light, I've gone, oi, are you even going to do anything? No, we've got other priorities. Really? Because you're not arresting the shoplifters, you're not dealing with anything else, a crime that we're aware of. You must be up to something else. The thing is, it does give, the e-scooter riders, bike riders,